Welcome to Liberty Audiobook. You are about to embark on a journey that will redefine your understanding of intelligence, strategy, and success. This is not another guide to memorizing facts or accumulating trivia. This is a blueprint for transforming your mind into a strategic weapon, a tool for navigating life with unparalleled clarity and foresight. The title of this audiobook is Become Dangerously Smart for Your Career, Train Your Mind to Win. But what does it truly mean to be dangerously smart? It is not about having the highest IQ score, nor is it about effortlessly reciting obscure facts in conversation. True dangerous intelligence is far more subtle, far more profound. It is the kind of intelligence that grants you a quiet, undeniable advantage in every sphere of life. It is the ability to read situations with uncanny accuracy, to anticipate outcomes before they manifest, to make fewer costly mistakes, and to move through the complexities of existence with precision instead of perpetual confusion. When someone possesses this kind of dangerous intelligence, they cease to be a mere passenger in their own story. They transform into a strategist, an architect of their destiny, meticulously choosing their moves rather than simply reacting to the whims of circumstance. In the chapters that follow, we will unlock the mental tools, forge the habits, and cultivate the ways of thinking that will elevate you beyond average reasoning. You will discover the profound truth that clarity conquers noise, that information, when properly wielded, becomes potent leverage. You will learn how emotional discipline shapes and secures outcomes, and you will uncover the hidden strategies employed by the smartest people in the world as they make decisions, communicate, observe, and relentlessly build advantage. Our goal here is not for you to be merely admired for your intellect. It is for you to become profoundly effective, a person whose thinking consistently produces tangible, measurable results. You will notice a recurring theme among the most strategic minds. They do not rush. They do not panic. They possess an almost uncanny ability to see patterns where others perceive only randomness. They position themselves for desired outcomes, refusing to surrender their fate to the capricious hand of luck. These are not innate gifts reserved for a chosen few. These are learnable skills, accessible to anyone willing to put in the deliberate practice. And once you begin to adopt them, you will find that your life changes in subtle yet undeniably powerful ways. Opportunities that were once invisible will suddenly become apparent. Mistakes that seemed unavoidable will become preventable. And success, once a distant hope, will become less dependent on chance and more a direct consequence of your refined thinking. In this audiobook, we will delve deep into philosophical principles, explore historical examples of strategic brilliance, and challenge conventional wisdom. But we will always remain practical. Every idea, every framework, every insight shared here is designed to be immediately usable. These are not abstract concepts for academic debate, but tools you can apply today in your decision-making, your relationships, your business ventures, your personal learning, your time management, and your journey of personal growth. If you are ready to stop guessing and start understanding, if you are prepared to move from merely reacting to actively anticipating, and if you are eager to think like a true strategist instead of just hoping life works out, then you are precisely where you need to be. Let us begin. Chapter 1. Start with clarity, or stay confused forever. Clarity. It is the bedrock upon which all dangerous intelligence is built. Without it, every other attempt at improvement, every effort to gain an edge, becomes nothing more than an educated guess. Imagine trying to hit a target shrouded in a dense fog. You might fire arrows, you might aim with conviction, but your chances of hitting the bullseye are minimal. That, my friend, is life without clarity. When you are unclear, you do not know what to aim at. You do not know what truly matters. And perhaps most critically, you do not know what to ignore. Without these fundamental distinctions, life does not just become hard, it becomes an exhausting, unending struggle. You find yourself moving constantly, yet never progressing. You work tirelessly, yet achieve little of significance. You think endlessly, yet rarely arrive at true understanding. Clarity, then, is the mental lens that cuts through that fog. It is the intellectual instrument that makes everything sharper, simpler, and profoundly more strategic. It is the first step in moving from being a passive participant to an active architect of your life. And here's a truth that most people only learn the hard way. Confusion is expensive. It is a devourer of your most precious resources. It wastes your finite time, drains your limited energy, and perhaps most tragically, forces you to settle for whatever arbitrary circumstances happen to land in front of you instead of what you truly desire. But clarity is more than just knowing what you want. Dangerous clarity goes a step further. It is knowing precisely why you want it and understanding the exact price you are willing to pay to achieve it. Without the why, your most ambitious goals will inevitably collapse under the slightest pressure. Without defining the price, your grand aspirations will remain mere fantasies, forever out of reach. This is the precise point where dangerously smart people distinguish themselves. They do not just dream, they define. They do not just hope, they plan. They do not just react, they direct the flow of their lives. They intentionally carve out time to think deeply, to discern what truly matters, and to establish a clear hierarchy of priorities. And once they make those choices, they move with an unshakable, laser-like purpose. One of the greatest, yet often overlooked, advantages that clarity bestows upon you is the profound ability to say no. When your target is undefined, when your priorities are hazy, every new opportunity, every shiny distraction, every urgent request seems equally appealing. But when you possess a crystal-clear understanding of your aims, most of those things immediately reveal themselves for what they truly are: distractions. And distractions are the silent, insidious enemy of intelligent living. They do not always appear harmful. Sometimes they look exciting, promising, even profitable. Sometimes they evoke a powerful sense of urgency. But if they do not undeniably move you closer to what truly matters, to your defined why and your chosen price, and they are merely noise, cleverly disguised as options. Clarity acts as an impenetrable shield against that noise. Now, let us understand something crucial. Clarity does not just appear by accident. It is not a gift from the heavens. It must be actively created. It must be earned through deliberate mental effort. You earn clarity by choosing to think deeply instead of rushing impulsively. Earn clarity by consciously asking better questions, questions that force your mind to confront reality and dismantle assumptions. Questions like, what am I actually trying to achieve here? What specific outcome do I truly want? What would success look like in this situation? And conversely, what would failure look like? What resources do I currently possess? And what resources do I conspicuously lack? Who truly wins if I remain unchanged? And who stands to benefit if I choose to transform? When you feed your mind with genuine, probing questions, it will, in turn, provide you with genuine, powerful answers. And real answers are the ultimate source of power in a complex world. Notice how clarity dramatically simplifies decision-making. When you are clear, decisions become faster, lighter, and more efficient. The path forward emerges. But when you are unclear, decisions become heavy, burdened by doubt. You hesitate, you overthink, you delay. You wait for external permission, for cosmic signs, for someone or something else to make the choice for you. And waiting, my friend, is one of the most costly habits in life. Opportunities rarely wait. People rarely wait. Time, that relentless force, never waits. Clarity cuts through that paralyzing hesitation like a sharp blade. Another profound advantage of clarity is the emotional stability it provides. When you know precisely what you are doing and, more importantly, why you are doing it, you do not panic every time you encounter friction, resistance, or unexpected turbulence. You do not abandon your carefully laid plans simply because someone expresses doubt or criticism. You do not spiral into insecurity every time the results are slower than you anticipated. You expect turbulence. Why? Because turbulence does not rattle people who know exactly where they are going. Only the lost, the directionless, truly panic when the weather changes. Becoming dangerously smart begins here, with this fundamental commitment to clarity. Because clarity is the foundation upon which every strategic improvement, every meaningful advancement, is built. Without clarity, strategy degenerates into mere improvisation, a series of hopeful guesses. Without clarity, learning becomes nothing more than trivia, an accumulation of disconnected facts. Without clarity, even Herculean effort dissipates into exhaustion, producing little lasting impact. But with clarity, everything changes. With clarity, effort compounds, each action building on the last. With clarity, learning effortlessly translates into tangible advantage. With clarity, every decision you make becomes intentional, intelligent, and aligned with your deepest objectives. If you wish to make your life harder than it needs to be, then by all means, remain unclear. But if you desire to make your life sharper, more strategic, and profoundly more effective, then your journey must begin with clarity. Define your target, define your priorities, define your boundaries. Because the very moment you embrace clarity, confusion loses its suffocating power over you, and you begin to truly win. Chapter 2. Turn information into advantage. Information. We are swimming in it, drowning in it, perhaps. In our hyper-connected world, facts, figures, opinions, and analysis cascade over us from every direction. But here is the crucial distinction. Information by itself is not power. If it were, the highest achievers in the world would simply be those who knew the most facts, or consumed the most content, or scrolled through the most feeds. Yet, as you well know, that is not how life works. The people who consistently win, the individuals who become truly dangerously smart, are not merely collectors of information. They are alchemists. They are the ones who possess the rare skill of converting raw information into usable insight, transforming it into leverage, sculpting it into strategy, and ultimately forging it into an undeniable advantage. They do not just accumulate data. They actively, intelligently convert it. Consider our current reality. Information is everywhere, and precisely because it is everywhere, it is alarmingly easy to drown in its endless deluge. You can scroll 4 hours, watch countless videos, read an endless stream of articles, and yet, paradoxically, you might still not get smarter. You might still not make better decisions. You might still not move forward in any meaningful way. Why? Because information without direction, without purpose, inevitably devolves into noise. And noise, far from helping you, actively distracts you. It occupies your mental bandwidth without delivering value. To truly get smarter, to develop dangerous intelligence, you need a sophisticated filter. You need a purpose that guides your consumption. You need a robust system to discern what is genuinely useful from what is merely entertainment, cleverly disguised as learning. Dangerously smart people do not chase random information down every rabbit hole. Instead, they actively seek patterns. They hunt for enduring principles. And above all, they demand relevance. Relevance matters deeply. Knowledge that is not relevant to your current goals, to your overarching strategy, or to your desired trajectory has no strategic value. It might be interesting to know. It might even make you sound clever at a dinner party. But it will not, I repeat, will not help you become effective. Real intelligence respects priorities. It aligns information acquisition with strategic objectives. Here is something most people never consciously think about. Every piece of information, every data point, serves a different purpose. Some information helps you make faster, more confident decisions. Some helps you proactively avoid costly mistakes. Some empowers you to recognize emerging opportunities before others do. Some helps you understand the intricate psychology of other people. And some, perhaps most importantly, helps you understand yourself. Key, then, is learning to categorize and contextualize information, rather than allowing it to blend into a single, undifferentiated blob of random facts. Let us slow down here for a moment, because this is a critical distinction. Smart people do not just ask, "What is this?" That is a passive question. Instead, they actively, relentlessly ask, "How can I use this?" That single shift from passive consumption to active utility changes everything. When you begin to see information as potential leverage, your brain ceases to be a mere storage unit, warehouse for facts. It transforms into a dynamic processing center, a laboratory where raw data is refined into actionable insight. And processing centers are always more valuable than mere storage units. For instance, financial information, when understood and applied, can help you make better investment decisions. Career information, strategically analyzed, can help you navigate your industry and accelerate your professional ascent. Psychological information can help you read human behavior with greater accuracy, predicting actions and reactions. And strategic information can empower you to plan moves not just ahead of others, but beyond others, anticipating consequences across multiple layers. When you understand the specific purpose of information, you instinctively start pairing it with action. And knowledge, paired with action, becomes an unstoppable force. It becomes power. Another profound advantage dangerously smart people possess is their relentless habit of connecting dots. When most people learn something new, it often sits in their mind in isolation, like a single, unconnected puzzle piece. They acquire facts but do not integrate them. But when strategic thinkers encounter new information, they immediately ask themselves, "Where does this fit? What other ideas does this relate to?" They actively match patterns, compare concepts, integrate new data with existing knowledge, and relentlessly look for second-order effects. Over time, these intricate connections form complex mental maps, internal GPS systems of how the world, your industry, or human nature truly works. And once you possess these sophisticated mental maps, the world ceases to be a confusing, unpredictable place. This is important for a fundamental reason. Maps help you navigate. Without maps, you inevitably get lost. Without maps, you are forced to rely on blind guessing, hoping for a stroke of luck. But when you possess accurate mental maps, decisions become dramatically easier. You know where you are, you know where you are going, and you understand the various paths that exist between those 2 points, allowing you to choose the most efficient and strategic route. The most intelligent minds do not just learn, they organize what they learn into coherent, actionable frameworks. Now, let us talk about the silent enemy of intelligent learning: passive consumption. Passive consumption feels like learning. It gives you the comforting sensation of progress, a false sense of intellectual growth. But sensation is not the same as genuine improvement. Passive consumption is akin to eating without digestion. You feel full, but you are not truly nourished. You may have consumed more, but you are not genuinely better. To become dangerously smart, you must consciously, deliberately transition from passive learning to active learning. Active learning is when you pause, you reflect, you question, you analyze, you synthesize, and most importantly, you apply. It is slower, yes, than the frantic scroll of passive consumption, but it is vastly, immeasurably more powerful. Here is another invaluable habit smart thinkers cultivate. They take notes, but not just any notes. They do not transcribe everything. They do not simply copy what they hear or read. Instead, they extract patterns, identify frameworks, and distill insights. They summarize complex concepts in their own words, because summarizing force is a deeper level of understanding. And once you understand something deeply, truly integrate it into your mental models, you never really lose it. It becomes a permanent part of your strategic arsenal. Dangerously smart people also learn relentlessly from other people, both directly and indirectly. They are astute observers. They study how successful individuals think, how they approach problem solving, how they make high-stakes decisions, and critically, how they respond under immense pressure. They pay meticulous attention to behaviors, not just to spoken words. The entire world becomes their classroom. And when you adopt this mindset, treating every interaction, every event, every outcome as an opportunity to learn, opportunities to grow appear everywhere. Why? Because everything becomes data. Wins, losses, failures, mistakes, conversations, industries, markets, relationships, trends, and even silence itself. At its highest level, information becomes true advantage is when you skillfully combine three essential skills: acquisition, interpretation, and application. Acquisition provides you with the raw material, delta, the facts. Interpretation gives you understanding, meaning, the insight. And application gives you results, the tangible impact, the strategic outcome. If any one of these three crucial components is missing, the entire system breaks down. If you acquire but do not interpret, you have noise. If you interpret but do not apply, you have mere theory, an unused blueprint. If you apply without prior acquisition or interpretation, you have blind, often reckless, action. True, dangerous intelligence requires all three, working in seamless concert. To close this chapter, remember one thing above all else. Raw information ages quickly, becoming outdated and irrelevant. But deep insight, carefully extracted and skillfully applied, compounds exponentially over time. And the people who become dangerously smart are the ones who master the art of extracting that insight, not just accumulating data. They learn how to think, not just what to think. And once you learn how to think strategically, precisely, and effectively, life ceases to be a chaotic gamble. It transforms into a game you can finally play with strategy instead of confusion, with intention instead of impulse, and with a quiet, undeniable advantage instead of merely hoping for luck. Chapter 3. Play long-term games in a short-term world. If you want to become dangerously smart, if you truly desire to win in the grand arena of life, you must cultivate the rare and potent ability to think beyond the immediate moment. Observe the world around you. Most of the suffering, confusion, and pervasive stress people experience stems directly from an almost pathological reactivity to the short term. They crave quick relief from discomfort, quick rewards for minimal effort, quick validation from external sources, and quick progress, even if it is superficial. The fundamental problem with this craving for speed is that the quick path is almost invariably the shallow path. It grants you a fleeting sensation of speed, but it provides no real distance. It offers temporary excitement, but delivers no lasting transformation. Long-term thinking, by its very nature, demands patience. But in return, it builds results that are not only lasting, but also, critically, compound over time. And compounding, my friend, is not just a financial concept. It is one of the most powerful forces a truly smart person can harness across every domain of their existence. Let us pause on that word for a second. Compounding. We often associate compounding exclusively with money in an investment account, but its power extends far beyond mere finance. Compounding applies to your skills. Each hour of deliberate practice makes the next hour more effective. It applies to your relationships. Small acts of kindness and trust, consistently delivered, build an unbreakable bond. It applies to your reputation. Integrity and consistency accumulate quiet respect. It applies to your knowledge. Each new piece of information integrates and enhances previous learning. It applies to your habits. Small, consistent actions create massive shifts over time. It applies to your health, your discipline, your credibility, and even the opportunities that come your way. When you adopt a long-term mindset, you consciously, strategically allow the force of compounding to work tirelessly in your favor. When you operate in a short-term mode, however, you constantly interrupt that compounding process, often just as it is about to yield its most interesting and powerful results. This is precisely why so many individuals never achieve extraordinary results. They quit too early. They change direction too frequently. Or, perhaps most commonly, they panic too easily at the first sign of resistance. And panic, let us be clear, is the ultimate enemy of sustained progress. Playing long-term games means consciously valuing endurance over fleeting excitement. It means diligently building robust systems instead of frantically chasing isolated events. It means positioning yourself with intentionality for where you aspire to be in the distant future, rather than simply settling for where it is most convenient or easiest to stand today. And here lies the profound paradox. The long-term thinkers eventually win the short-term game, too. Why? Because they operate from a position of strength and foresight. They make fewer desperate, reactive decisions. They build genuine, deep competence that cannot be easily replicated, and they accumulate advantage quietly, incrementally, almost invisibly over extended periods. By the time others are finally waking up to an emerging opportunity, long-term thinkers have already meticulously positioned themselves to capitalize on it, often with minimal visible effort. Let us talk about attention for a moment. The world we inhabit today is meticulously optimized for short-term stimulation. Notifications constantly ping for your attention. Updates stream without end. Entertainment is limitless and instantly gratifying. Communication is immediate, and the promise of fast results is everywhere. On the surface, this relentless pursuit of convenience seems beneficial. But underneath, it is subtly, insidiously making people mentally fragile. They lose the critical ability to sit with discomfort, to patiently wait, to focus deeply on a single task, to build something brick by painstaking brick, layer by disciplined layer. Dangerous intelligence, the kind we are cultivating here, requires precisely the opposite. It demands the profound ability to delay gratification. It requires the mental fortitude to sit with ambiguity, to tolerate uncertainty without succumbing to panic. And it necessitates the capacity to think in vast horizons, charting the course across years, rather than succumbing to the fleeting impulses of the moment. When you consciously choose to think long-term, you stop asking, "What feels good right now?" and you begin to ask a far more powerful question: what will truly matter in 5 years? In 10 years? That single fundamental shift in questioning creates an entirely different set of choices. You treat your relationships differently, investing in trust and reciprocity over immediate gain. You approach your career differently, prioritizing skill mastery and strategic positioning over chasing the next quick promotion. You engage with your learning differently, seeking deep understanding rather than superficial consumption. And you especially treat your mistakes differently. Short-term thinkers hide their mistakes, desperately attempting to protect their fragile egos. Long-term thinkers, however, meticulously study their mistakes, dissecting them with clinical precision to protect their future from repeating the same costly errors. Playing long-term games also fundamentally transforms how you interact with other people. When you think long-term, you naturally value trust and genuine connection over transactional interactions. You make decisions that intentionally strengthen your reputation and integrity rather than sacrificing them for quick, fleeting wins. You invest generously in relationships, cultivating goodwill, rather than constantly extracting from them. And over time, this patient investment builds a powerful network of genuine allies, not just a list of fleeting contacts. Allies are powerful. Allies open doors that would otherwise remain closed. Allies vouch for you when your name is on the line. Allies warn you about emerging threats long before they become visible. Allies create opportunities you could never manufacture alone. That, my friend, is long-term leverage in its purest form. Another critical area where long-term thinking creates an undeniable advantage is skill building. Most people, driven by short-term desires, want to be good quickly. So, they constantly seek shortcuts, hacks, and quick fixes. But shortcuts, almost without exception, produce only shallow, brittle skill. competence that crumbles under pressure. Long-term thinkers, however, are not afraid of the boring, foundational work. They embrace the fundamentals. They are not in a hurry to be impressive. They are in a hurry to be capable. And capability, true, deep capability, is priceless. Capable people can adapt effortlessly. Capable people can pivot strategically. Capable people remain profoundly valuable, regardless of the shifting external environment. In a world that changes with dizzying rapidity, adaptability, forged through patient skill building, is the real, enduring currency. Here's another interesting truth. Long-term thinking makes you emotionally stronger, more resilient. When you operate exclusively in short-term mode, every setback, every minor obstacle, feels catastrophic because it is judged within an infinitesimally tiny window of time. But when you think long-term, setbacks are recontextualized. They become mere data points. Failed attempt, simply one iteration out of many, a necessary step in the longer learning process. A slow season is just a chapter in a much larger story, not the entire book. Emotional volatility dramatically decreases because your perspective dramatically increases. And emotional stability, the ability to remain calm and clear-headed under pressure, is one of the greatest, most underrated forms of intelligence because it preserves your clarity precisely when you need it most. Thinking long-term also profoundly alters your relationship with time itself. You stop perceiving time as something you spend, a commodity to be used up. Instead, you begin to see time as something you invest. If you merely spend time, the best-case scenario is that you enjoyed the fleeting moment. The worst case is that you utterly wasted it. But if you intentionally invest time, you do so with the expectation of a return. And these returns manifest in countless forms: skill returns, knowledge returns, health returns, financial returns, opportunity returns, relationship returns. Time, then, transforms from an abstract concept into a powerful, deliberate tool, rather than just something you passively watch pass by. Now, here is the crucial twist. Playing long-term games is not about waiting forever, passively hoping for things to improve without action. That is procrastination, not strategy. Dangerous intelligence is not passive intelligence. It is fiercely, consistently intentional intelligence. It is about taking deliberate actions today that make the future demonstrably easier, richer in options, and lighter in stress. And the earlier you consciously adopt this mindset, the more powerful the force of compounding becomes. Starting late is always better than never starting at all, but starting early, with intentional long-term vision, creates truly exponential results that will astound you. And this brings us to a final, vital point worth emphasizing. Long-term thinking requires a profound faith in the unseen. You will not always see immediate, tangible proof that what you are doing is working. You will not always receive applause or external validation. You will not always feel instantaneous progress. And that, precisely, is why so many people quit. Not because the chosen path does not work, but because it works quietly at first. But quietly, my friend, is how compounding always begins. Loud is how it eventually ends. And the people who become dangerously smart are the ones with the rare fortitude to endure the quiet, often uncelebrated, foundational work long enough to ultimately enjoy the loud, undeniable triumph that inevitably follows. Chapter 4. Train your pattern recognition. One of the most underestimated, yet profoundly powerful, signs of true intelligence is the ability to recognize patterns. It is more than just noticing isolated events. It is the deeper capacity to connect those events, to understand their underlying relationships. It is not just observing what people do. It is the insight to understand why they do it, and, more importantly, to anticipate what they will likely do next. When you deliberately develop your pattern recognition skills, life ceases to feel random. Outcomes lose their air of mystery. You begin to predict instead of merely react, and prediction, even partial prediction, grants you an enormous strategic advantage. Everything in life, from the grand movements of markets to the intimate dynamics of human relationships, has patterns. Markets ebb and flow in predictable cycles. Human behavior, despite its superficial variability, often adheres to underlying psychological scripts. Conflict, whether personal or geopolitical, follows identifiable escalation and de-escalation patterns. Success has its repeatable formulas. Failure, too, often stems from recurring missteps. Health and disease follow discernible patterns. Even our emotions, seemingly chaotic, reveal rhythms and triggers when closely observed. The people who consistently feel blindsided by life, who are constantly surprised by outcomes, are typically those who have not learned to look beyond the immediate moment. They judge situations solely by how they appear right now, rather than by how they are developing over time. Smart thinkers, on the other hand, judge things by their trajectories. They do not just ask, "What is happening?" They ask the far more powerful question, "Where is this leading?" That single question alone is a distinguishing factor, separating amateurs from true strategists in every domain. Because what truly matters most in life is not merely the event itself, but the direction, the trajectory, that event is pointing toward. A habit repeated, whether good or bad, is a pattern forming. A pattern forming, consistently reinforced, is a future being inexorably created. That is why dangerously smart people pay meticulous attention to early, subtle signals. They do not wait for consequences to become catastrophic and unavoidable. Instead, they make precise, timely adjustments when the signals are faint and quiet, long before the damage becomes obvious and overwhelming. Pattern recognition also profoundly impacts how you deal with people, often making you less emotional. When you understand recurring behavioral patterns, you stop taking everything personally. You cease interpreting people's actions as isolated, malicious incidents, and start seeing them as part of a larger, often unconscious, behavioral script. Someone who consistently avoids accountability will, almost certainly, avoid it again. Someone who habitually blames others will continue to do so. Someone who lies will likely lie again. Someone who consistently does the bare minimum will continue to operate at that level. Once you clearly discern the pattern, their behavior loses its power to frustrate, infuriate, or even surprise you. It becomes predictable data. This insight also acts as a powerful shield against manipulation. People who lack strong pattern recognition skills are remarkably easy to mislead, because they judge every new situation as if it exists in a vacuum. They fall for the same well-worn stories, the same empty promises, the same emotional hooks, repeatedly. Individuals who recognize patterns, however, learn with astonishing speed. They do not need to experience pain 10 times to understand what is truly happening. Once is often enough to collect data. Twice is confirmation. 3 times, as the saying goes, is a rule pattern firmly established. Pattern recognition is also one of the fundamental pillars of strategic decision-making. Great investors, great negotiators, great leaders, great communicators, great thinkers, their cultivated ability to discern and interpret patterns. They meticulously observe the past, not because the future will be identical, but because human behavior, market dynamics, and systemic forces rarely change as much as people pretend. Circumstances may change, tools may evolve, styles may shift, but the underlying human drivers, greed, ambition, insecurity, curiosity, pride, love, and self-preservation, remain remarkably consistent across centuries and cultures. Here is where it gets truly interesting. Pattern recognition is not some innate talent you either possess or lack. It is entirely trainable. It begins with a conscious commitment to paying attention and, crucially, with slowing down your default speed of interpretation. Most people jump to conclusions instantly. They react quickly, label quickly, and categorize quickly. But this rapid, Superficial labeling often kills a very possibility of accurate pattern detection. To truly detect patterns, you need to observe without rushing to explain. You need to notice repetition. You need to pause and ask, have I seen something like this before? Under what specific conditions did it occur? And with what specific results? Another incredibly powerful way to develop and sharpen your pattern recognition is to learn across domains. When you deliberately draw knowledge from vastly different fields, psychology, business, history, military strategy, communication, art, science, begin to see how fundamental principles repeat themselves, often closed in different jargon. For example, you might notice that consistent winners in business are often the ones who can delay gratification, just like consistent winners in fitness or long-term investing. The specific domain changes, but the underlying psychological pattern remains remarkably the same. The more cross-domain knowledge you build, the more transferable and robust your pattern recognition becomes. Now, let us talk about feedback loops. Patterns become dramatically clearer when you meticulously track outcomes over time. If you never measure anything, if you never review the consequences of your actions, you will never truly notice the repetition, the cycles, the patterns. This applies equally to your own behavior. If every year feels remarkably similar to the last, it is not necessarily because the world is not changing. It is often because your patterns are not changing. You keep choosing the same actions, the same reactions, the same habits, year after year. Leaders and top performers study their own patterns as critically, as ruthlessly, as they study external ones. They ask, what keeps happening to me? And more importantly, why? That single question alone, honestly confronted, can save someone 5 years of repeating the same self-sabotaging cycle. Pattern recognition also fundamentally alters how you interpret opportunities. Some people get lucky once, strike gold, but they have no idea why it happened. They cannot repeat the success because they do not understand the underlying pattern, the mechanics behind it. Others, however, build success systematically, not because they are luckier, but because they understand not only what worked, but profoundly why it worked. And if you truly understand why something works, you can recreate it, refine it, improve it, and scale it. That, my friend, is how advantage is built intelligently, deliberately, not accidentally. There is one more profound benefit worth mentioning. Pattern recognition reduces fear. When the world feels entirely random, chaotic, and unpredictable, fear naturally increases. When the world reveals its underlying structure, its patterns, even if that structure is not perfect, even if the prediction is not guaranteed, the mere act of understanding trajectories creates immense psychological stability. You stop feeling like life is simply happening to you. Instead, you begin to feel like you are intelligently interacting with a system you can learn, adapt to, and ultimately influence. To become dangerously smart, you must train your eyes to see repetition, your mind to discern cause and effect, and your memory to store fundamental lessons and principles rather than just isolated events. Because when you learn to recognize patterns, life opens up in entirely new and empowering ways. You become significantly harder to deceive, much harder to surprise, far harder to discourage, and ultimately, profoundly harder to stop. Chapter 5. Outsmart Problems. Anticipating them. One of the greatest, most subtle, yet undeniably potent advantages possessed by dangerously smart people is not their ability to solve problems faster than others. It is, far more effectively, their uncanny capacity to prevent many problems from ever appearing in the first place. They are futurists in their everyday lives. They look ahead. They anticipate. They pay meticulous attention to the early, faint signals that most people instinctively ignore. And this fundamental shift in perspective profoundly changes the way they navigate through life. Instead of constantly being in reactive mode, frantically putting out fires as they erupt, Dangerously smart individuals proactively build robust systems that prevent fires from even starting. Instead of reacting in a state of panic, when a crisis hits, they prepare quietly, systematically, and thoroughly. Prevention is, without a doubt, one of the most underrated forms of intelligence. It does not feel dramatic. It does not create heroic narratives. It does not generate applause in the moment, but it is incredibly, immeasurably powerful. Think about it for a moment. Solving a problem that has already manifested consumes precious time, drains finite energy, and depletes valuable resources. Preventing a problem, however, preserves time, conserves energy, and protects resources. Prevention shields your momentum. It guards your confidence. It preserves your clarity. And yet, tragically, many people operate with the deeply ingrained "I will handle it when it happens" mindset. They passively wait for emergencies to declare themselves. They wait for pain to become unbearable. They wait for consequences to become devastating. And by the time they finally stir themselves to respond, the problem has usually multiplied exponentially, financially, emotionally, or socially. Anticipation, my friends, is always smarter and more cost-effective than belated repair. To master the art of anticipating problems, you must deliberately train yourself to think beyond the immediate moment. You have to ask the critical, often uncomfortable, questions. If I continue on this current path, what will happen next? What are the logical, inevitable consequences? Or, if I make this specific decision, what could realistically go wrong? What are the potential points of failure? These are not negative questions born of anxiety. They are strategic questions born of foresight. There is a vast and crucial difference between negativity and foresight. Negativity fixates on fear and paralyzes you. Foresight focuses on preparation and empowers you. One drains you, the other protects you. Dangerously smart thinkers regularly run simulations in their heads, not complex, mathematical algorithms, but practical, intuitive mental models. They visualize scenarios, meticulously map out potential consequences, and pre-plan their responses. They consciously consider alternatives and, crucially, contingencies. Contingency planning is a hallmark of truly intelligent decision-making. It ensures that when life inevitably pushes back, the push does not break you. When you have well-thought-out options, pressure dramatically decreases. When you lack options, pressure dramatically increases, often leading to poor choices. Now, let us revisit the concept of patterns, because patterns are deeply, inextricably connected to anticipation. Problems rarely, if ever, appear without warning. There are always early indicators, subtle behaviors, small inconsistencies, quiet discomfort, minor mistakes, recurring delays. People who end up completely blindsided usually ignored these early signs. The signs were there. They simply did not want to see them, or were not trained to interpret them. Smart thinkers actively look for these weak signals, these faint whispers of future trouble. They do not wait for the crisis to erupt into a loud, undeniable scream. Anticipation also demands emotional discipline. Most people instinctively shy away from thinking ahead because thinking ahead often forces them to confront uncomfortable truths. It reveals vulnerabilities. It exposes risks. It forces them to admit, sometimes painfully, that their current situation or trajectory may not be sustainable. But suppression is not a strategy. Avoidance is not intelligence. Facing reality early, even a harsh reality, gives you far more time to adapt, to pivot, to fortify. And adaptation, more often than not, is the critical difference between long-term survival and ultimate failure. One of the most practical and powerful methods for anticipating problems is to reverse your thinking. Instead of asking, "How do I succeed?" consciously ask, "How do I fail?" This is a powerful mental model known as inversion. It forces you to identify the most likely failure points, the critical vulnerabilities, the things most likely to derail or ruin your plans. Once you have identified them with brutal honesty, you can then systematically build safeguards, redundancies, and preventative measures. This approach is routinely used by engineers designing critical infrastructure, by savvy investors managing risk, by military strategists planning campaigns, and by high-level decision-makers across every field. It works just as powerfully in everyday life. If you can systematically eliminate the most obvious failure points, success becomes dramatically easier, often feeling almost inevitable. Let us explore another angle: problem anticipation in relationships and communication. Many conflicts do not materialize out of nowhere. They emerge from unclear agreements, unspoken and unmet expectations, poorly defined boundaries, or consistently ignored signals. Smart communicators anticipate emotional responses before they speak. They think deeply about how their words might be received, how someone might interpret their intentions, and what specific outcomes those interpretations might produce. Communication, then, transforms from a reactive impulse into a calculated, strategic act. In the realm of business, anticipation is even more profoundly crucial. Entire industries have been decimated. Once dominant companies have crumbled because their leaders failed to anticipate seismic shifts in technology, profound changes in consumer behavior, or emerging competitive threats. Meanwhile, the truly strategic leaders saw the shift coming early. They positioned themselves. They made bold, calculated moves before the demand fully arrived, not as a panicked reaction, after. It became undeniable. That, my friend, is the difference between being perpetually reactive and consistently being ahead of the curve. That there is a final, often overlooked, aspect to anticipation that people rarely discuss: anticipating your own weaknesses. It is relatively easy to identify external risks, external threats, and external challenges. It is infinitely harder to acknowledge internal risks, hidden flaws within your own character or habits. Procrastination, unchecked ego, destructive impatience, willful ignorance, stubbornness, emotional impulsiveness. Most of the recurring problems people face are not primarily caused by the outside world. They are overwhelmingly caused by their own entrenched habits, their own psychological blind spots, colliding relentlessly with reality. When you honestly anticipate your own flaws, when you confront your own self-sabotaging tendencies, you give yourself a crucial chance to correct them, to fortify yourself before they inevitably sabotage your efforts. And that, arguably, may be the highest form of prevention, true self-mastery. Let us be unequivocally clear: anticipation will not eliminate all problems. Life will always have its share of genuine surprises, its unpredictable turns. But it will eliminate a vast majority if necessary. Problems, the ones that drain your energy, delay your progress, and systematically discourage you. And every necessary problem you prevent creates more room, more bandwidth, more freedom to pursue truly meaningful goals, instead of constantly being stuck in a cycle of damage repair. That is why dangerously smart people often appear to move through life with a certain ease, an almost effortless grace. It is not that their path is inherently easier than yours. It is that they have learned the invaluable skill of avoiding the creation of additional, self-imposed friction along the way. To outsmart problems is to think ahead. To think ahead is to profoundly respect reality in all its complexity. And to respect reality is to accept that the smartest, most strategic move is often the one that prevents the chaos from ever starting in the first place. Chapter 6. Make decisions like a chess player. Decisions. They are the invisible levers that steer your life. Decisions determine your direction, and ultimately, your direction determines your destiny. If you truly aspire to become dangerously smart, you must consciously, deliberately elevate the way you make decisions. Observe the common approach. Most people decide based on immediate convenience, fleeting impulse, or raw emotion. Their choices are often reactive, short-sighted, and inconsistent. Now, consider the chess player. A master chess player makes decisions based on meticulous analysis of position, anticipation of outcomes, and adherence to a grand strategy. They do not just ask, "What should I do right now?" They ask the far more profound question, "What will this move create 3, 5, or even 10 steps from now? What cascade of consequences will it set in motion?" That fundamental difference alone separates amateurs from strategists in every conceivable area of life. Chess serves as a remarkably useful metaphor for intelligent decision-making because it teaches something vital. A good move is not merely good in the isolation of the present moment. It is good in the sequence. Many people make decisions that appear brilliant, or at least beneficial, instantly, but which inevitably collapse, often catastrophically, much later. They chase short-term benefits, taking tempting shortcuts that carry devastating long-term costs. Others, however, make decisions that feel difficult, uncomfortable, or even counterintuitive in the moment, but which strategically create expansive long-term openings, advantages, and opportunities. When you consciously shift your decision-making framework from emotional impulse to strategic, multi-layered thinking, life ceases to feel random and chaotic. It begins to feel intentional, orchestrated, and profoundly within your control. Strategic decision-making begins with a clear, honest awareness of the board. In chess, you must know precisely where every piece is positioned before you can decide where to move. In life, your board encompasses your environment, your available resources, the dynamics of your relationships, your inherent weaknesses, your emergent opportunities, and your unavoidable constraints. A move made without a comprehensive understanding of your personal board is nothing more than blind guessing. And while guessing might occasionally yield a fortunate outcome, consistency, hallmark of dangerous intelligence, comes only from clarity and informed insight. Once you have this foundational awareness, the next critical layer is foresight. Chess players do not just think about their own next move. They meticulously consider how their opponent will respond to it. They anticipate countermoves, potential traps, and future positions. In life, every decision, every action, has a ripple effect. When you speak, people respond. When you make a financial move, the market or your personal economy responds. When you establish a boundary, others adjust their behavior. When you change a habit, your internal and external environment reacts. Strategic thinkers constantly ask, "If I do this, what happens next?" And then, crucially, and after that, and after that, this profound ability to simulate potential outcomes, to run mental what-if scenarios, is what transforms mere decisions into sophisticated strategy, rather than leaving them to the capriciousness of chance. Another powerful principle from chess, it applies universally to life, is the distinction between trading and sacrificing. A trade is typically an exchange where you give up one resource for another of roughly similar, immediate value. A sacrifice, however, is a deliberate, often painful act where you willingly give up something valuable now to gain something far more valuable later. Most true breakthroughs in life, in personal growth, in business, in relationships, require some form of intelligent sacrifice. You might sacrifice immediate comfort for long-term growth. You might sacrifice vast amounts of time for the mastery of a skill. You might sacrifice your ego for invaluable feedback. Or you might sacrifice short-term pleasure for profound, enduring freedom. Short-term thinkers instinctively avoid sacrifice because their focus is entirely on what they immediately lose. Long-term, strategic thinkers, however, embrace intelligent sacrifice because their focus is squarely on what they unequivocally gain in the future. Chess also teaches the profound value of restraint. Not every apparent opportunity must be seized. Not every open line of attack is worth pursuing. Some positions, some tempting options, are in fact cunning traps cleverly disguised as advantageous openings. In life, these traps often appear as shiny distractions, promises of easy money, guarantees of instant validation, or alluring shortcuts that bypass the necessary, foundational work. Strategic people learn to pause instead of instinctively pounce. That deliberate pause buys them invaluable time to observe, to analyze, to consider consequences. And considered observation is the most potent preventative against regret. Another key layer of strategic intelligence is knowing the crucial difference between tactics and strategy. Tactics are short-term actions designed to solve immediate problems or achieve immediate objectives. Strategy, on the other hand, is the overarching, long-term plan that defines your ultimate direction and guides all your tactical choices. Many people, tragically, drown in tactics. They spend their days frantically putting out fires, endlessly handling tasks, and constantly worrying, yet they make no real, sustained progress. Why? Because their countless actions serve no coherent, guiding strategy. Chess players employ tactics only to serve a larger, predefined plan. Life works exactly the same way. Without strategy, tactics become mere busy work, a treadmill of unproductive motion. With strategy, tactics transform into meaningful, compounding progress. Now, let us address the often turbulent emotional side of decision-making. Good decisions demand clarity, and clarity, unfortunately, collapses under the weight of strong emotion. Fear, when unchecked, makes you wildly overestimate risks and paralyzes action. Anger, when allowed to dominate, makes you dangerously underestimate consequences and pushes you towards destructive acts. Excitement, though seemingly positive, can blind you to crucial warning signs and inflate your confidence to dangerous levels. Impulsiveness, driven by any strong emotion, makes you skip critical analysis entirely. Strategic thinkers possess the self-awareness to know when not to decide. Sometimes, the smartest move is to simply wait until the emotional storm has passed and your internal weather has settled. A delayed decision, chosen consciously, is not the same as indecision. A strategically delayed decision can be a powerful choice that prevents catastrophic long-term damage. Another immensely useful mental habit is second-order thinking. First-order thinking asks, what happens if I do this? Second-order thinking, the hallmark of dangerous intelligence, asks, and then what happens because of that? What are the consequences of the consequences? Most bad decisions stem from a complete disregard for second-order consequences. For example, quitting a job impulsively might make you feel momentarily free today, but profoundly stressed next month when bills are due. Saying yes to every request might make you liked today, but utterly exhausted and resentful later. Eating for immediate pleasure today might cost you your long-term health in the future. The smartest thinkers consistently look beyond the first, most obvious consequence, projecting their choices forward in time. Strategic decision-making also inherently involves precise resource allocation. Your time, your energy, your attention, and your willpower are all finite, limited resources. You cannot, and should not, invest equally in everything. Therefore, you must strategically decide where the highest, most leveraged returns lie. Not all moves on the board are equal. Some decisions change absolutely nothing. Some decisions, however, change everything. Smart thinkers diligently protect their most valuable resources, allocating them judiciously to high-impact moves, rather than squandering them on trivial battles or unproductive distractions. And finally, your decisions must always align with your positioning. In chess, a piece is powerful not solely because of the piece itself, but because of where it is placed on the board. Its strategic value is context-dependent. In life, raw talent certainly matters, but strategic positioning multiplies that talent exponentially. Being in the right industry, connected to the right network, operating within the right environment, and acting at the right timing, these factors amplify the impact of your decisions dramatically. Smart people consciously choose their environments strategically, rather than leaving them to the vagaries of chance or default. They do not just ask, "What move should I make?" They ask the even more fundamental question, "Where should I be playing?" When you consciously begin to make decisions like a chess player, your life becomes less about frantic reacting and much more about deliberate orchestration. You stop living, move to move, swayed by every immediate stimulus, and begin living strategy to strategy, guided by a clear, long-term vision. And that profound, transformative shift from impulse to intention is one of the most core, defining signs of becoming dangerously smart. Chapter 7. Upgrade your inputs. Upgrade your thinking. Your mind is a sophisticated, powerful processing unit, but it operates on a fundamental principle: garbage in, garbage out. It cannot produce anything beyond the quality of what you feed into it. Just like a high-performance machine cannot deliver superior output if it is processing inferior materials, the human mind cannot generate strong ideas, sound decisions, or robust strategies if it is operating on weak, diluted, or toxic inputs. If you aspire to become dangerously smart, you must embark on a deliberate, relentless mission to upgrade everything you consume. This is not merely about the content you read or watch. It extends to the conversations you engage in, the environments you inhabit, and even, surprisingly, the problems you choose to grapple with. Yes, problems too. Because the level of problems you actively engage with directly determines the level of solutions you learn how to create, and thus, the cognitive muscles you develop. Let us start with information. Most people consume information primarily for entertainment, not for enhancement. They scroll mindlessly, watch passively, skim superficially, and absorb a constant, diluted stream of trivia. It feels stimulating in the moment, a gentle hum of mental activity, that it fundamentally changes nothing. The mind is busy. Yes, that is not becoming better, sharper, or more capable. For information to truly make you smarter, to elevate your thinking, it must do one of three things. It must challenge you, it must stretch you, or it must refine you. Light information is akin to light food, for it might taste good, but it offers no deep nourishment. To build a robust, strategic mind, you need heavier inputs. Books that force you to confront your assumptions, ideas that make you genuinely uncomfortable, perspectives that rigorously challenge your cherished beliefs. That, and only that, is the raw material your mind uses to construct higher-level, more sophisticated thinking patterns. But upgrading your inputs is not limited to books, articles, or lectures. One of the most influential, yet often overlooked, inputs in your life is the quality of your conversations. Conversations are powerful architects of belief, and beliefs, in turn, are the architects of behavior. Spend enough time around people who habitually complain, and you will inevitably find yourself adopting a complaining mindset. Spend enough time around people who meticulously plan, and you will begin to plan with greater foresight. Spend enough time around people who relentlessly build and create, and you will find your own impulse to build strengthening. The mind, being a highly absorbent instrument, inevitably absorbs the dominant energy, prevailing mindset, and the unspoken standards around it. That is why dangerously smart thinkers are incredibly selective about who they surround themselves with, not because they are elitist, but because they possess a deep understanding of mental contagion. Thoughts spread, behaviors spread, and crucially, standards spread. Now, let us talk about environments. Your physical and social environment profoundly affects your thinking, often even when you are completely unaware of its influence. Clutter in your physical space often creates mental distraction and confusion. Constant noise, whether literal or metaphorical, fosters shallow, fragmented thinking. Perpetual pressure, without release, breeds anxiety and diminishes cognitive performance. On the other hand, intentional order in your surroundings creates mental clarity. Moments of genuine silence create space for deep reflection and insight, and carefully chosen challenges, rather than overwhelming stress, create robust growth. A strategic mind simply cannot form optimally in a perpetually chaotic, uncurated environment. People often attempt to upgrade themselves without ever upgrading the spaces where they operate. But place matters. Your environment either acts as a powerful reinforcing agent for your goals, or it silently, inexorably erodes them. It either strengthens your thinking or insidiously weakens it. Here is something less obvious, but extremely important. The types of problems you choose to engage with are also powerful inputs. If you spend your life perpetually dealing with small, petty problems, trivial arguments, nagging insecurities, unproductive gossip, corrosive jealousy, endless drama, you will never develop the cognitive bandwidth, the mental musculature required to handle genuinely bigger, more impactful challenges. Your finite mental capacity becomes entirely consumed by the trivial. Smart people actively outgrow small problems by consciously refusing to fuel them. They conserve their precious mental resources for the real challenges: building, designing, creating, strategizing, improving, scaling, connecting, learning. Those, and only those, are the problems that truly upgrade your thinking. Upgrading your inputs also means consistently upgrading the level of questions you ask yourself and others. Weak, superficial questions inevitably generate weak, superficial answers. Strong, penetrating questions, however, force your brain to search for deeper explanations, to connect more dots, to challenge more assumptions. For example, habitually asking, "Why is this always happening to me?" will produce victim-oriented, disempowering answer. Asking, "What is this situation trying to teach me?" transforms the exact same circumstance into a profound source of insight and growth. Asking, "What is the real problem here?" beneath the surface cuts through layers of complexity and symptoms to reveal the core issue. Questions are powerful prompts that profoundly shape your cognition. Your brain, being an obedient servant, answers whatever you ask it. So, consciously choose to ask better questions. Let us address another critical modern input challenge: information overload. Consuming more is emphatically not the same as consuming better. In fact, consuming more, indiscriminately, often destroys clarity. The more undifferentiated noise your brain is forced to process, the less signal it is capable of detecting. The dangerously smart do not just upgrade their inputs, they meticulously curate them. They filter aggressively, discarding what is irrelevant or low value. They consciously choose depth over sheer volume. They value profound comprehension over frantic consumption. They adopt a guiding mindset: better inputs, fewer distractions. Another immensely powerful input is mentorship, whether direct and personal or indirect, through the study of great minds. A mentor, in essence, upgrades your thinking by compressing decades of their hard-won insight into moments of concentrated wisdom. Even if you never have the privilege of meeting the person, you can learn invaluable lessons from their biographies, their interviews, their documented failures, and their articulated frameworks. This provides you with immense leverage. You do not have to repeat the same costly mistakes that the world has already painstakingly documented. You can effectively skip entire stages of trial and error through judicious exposure to their refined thinking. Now, let us look at your daily habits as inputs. Your daily routines and rituals constantly feed your brain. Sleep, for instance, directly affects your memory consolidation, your reasoning capabilities, and your creativity. Physical movement impacts your energy levels and your ability to focus deeply. Nutrition profoundly influences your clarity, your mood, and your sustained cognitive performance. Most people dramatically underestimate how fundamentally biological their intelligence is. You simply cannot think strategically, make optimal decisions, or sustain high-level mental performance when your body is chronically depleted. You cannot effectively plan your future when your physiology is stuck in a perpetual state of survival mode. The mind is not separate from the body. One fuels the other in an intricate, symbiotic relationship. Finally, upgrading your inputs also means consistently upgrading your personal standards. Your life, unequivocally, rises to the level of the standards you demand of it. If your default standard is merely comfort, you will automatically filter your inputs for ease, for convenience, for the path of least resistance. If your standard, however, is conscious challenge and relentless growth, you will automatically filter for inputs that push you, that provoke you, that expand your capabilities. Standards are invisible, yet immensely powerful. Filters that determine what you notice, what you tolerate, and what you actively pursue. When you consciously raise your standards, your inputs change automatically and effortlessly. You will find that you no longer derive satisfaction from low-quality conversations, from endless, low-value distractions, or from superficial, unchallenging thinking. It stops feeling satisfying. It starts feeling actively expensive to engage with. The bottom line is exquisitely simple. To fundamentally change how you think, you must fundamentally change what you feed your mind. Upgrade the inputs, and the outputs will, with remarkable consistency, upgrade with them. A dangerously smart mind is not an accidental birthright. It is a meticulously constructed edifice, built with intention. It is built from the information it absorbs, the caliber of people it listens to, the quality of environments it operates within, the incisiveness of the questions it asks, and the significance of the problems it chooses to engage with. When you exert conscious control over these vital inputs, intelligence ceases to be an accidental byproduct of chance and transforms into something meticulously engineered, a deliberate creation. Chapter 8. Use mental models to think faster and better. Becoming dangerously smart is not about cramming more raw information into your head. In a world of infinite information, that approach is futile. Instead, it is about possessing better frameworks for processing that information. And that, my friend, is where mental models come in. A mental model is simply a deeply ingrained way of understanding how the world works. It is a conceptual tool for thinking, a powerful lens through which to make decisions, and a shortcut for efficiently solving complex problems. With the right collection of mental models, you do not just think more, you think better and faster, with significantly fewer mistakes and less debilitating confusion. Mental models are invaluable because most people navigate life's complexities relying solely on instinct, without any underlying structure. They default to impulse, ingrained habit, or raw emotion. But when you operate without a framework, you are forced to painstakingly reinvent how to think every single time a new situation presents itself. That is mentally exhausting, incredibly inefficient, and prone to error. Strategy demands efficiency, and efficiency, in turn, demands robust tools. Mental models are precisely those tools. Let us begin with one of the most powerful and fundamental mental models: first principles thinking. First principles thinking requires you to strip away all assumptions, all conventional wisdom, all inherited beliefs, and ask, what is actually fundamentally true here? What are the irreducible, foundational facts? Instead of blindly copying what others do, or merely iterating on existing solutions, you break problems down to their most basic, elemental components. This model acts as a powerful preventative against accepting limitations that do not actually exist. It is the secret weapon of innovators and groundbreaking creators, not because they improve old answers, but because they have the courage and clarity to ask original, foundational questions. Another critically important model is second-order thinking. Most decisions appear perfectly fine, or even brilliant, when you only consider their immediate, first-order outcome. But true intelligence comes from consistently asking, and then what? What are the second-order effects? What are the consequences of the consequences? For instance, buying something cheap might save you money now, but could cost you significantly more in repairs, frustration, or replacement, and later. Complaining might bring you immediate relief or validation now, but it gradually weakens your resilience and sours your relationships later. Praising effort in a child encourages long-term growth and a mastery mindset, while praising only innate talent might stifle future risk-taking. When you consistently train yourself to think in second and third order steps, you naturally begin to make far smarter, more robust, long-term decisions. Then there is inversion. Inversion is a remarkably simple yet profoundly effective model. It asks you to flip the problem around. Instead of asking, "How do I succeed?" you consciously ask, "How do I fail? What would guarantee failure?" Instead of asking, "How do I keep customers?" you invert and ask, "What would make customers leave me?" Inversion works powerfully because the causes of failure are often far clearer, more identifiable, and more concrete than the nebulous paths to success. By systematically identifying and meticulously avoiding what leads to failure, you automatically, almost effortlessly, create pathways to success. It is one of the simplest and most practical mental models for navigating everyday life. Another indispensable mental model that dangerously smart people consistently employ is opportunity cost. This model serves as a stark reminder that every single choice you make has a hidden cost, the value of the next best alternative you could have done instead, but chose not to. If you spend your precious time on low-value entertainment, the opportunity cost is personal growth, skill acquisition, or meaningful connection. If you spend your money on superficial status symbols, the opportunity cost is investing in your future, building security, or creating leverage. The smartest thinkers are not afraid to say no, not because they lack interest or empathy, but because they deeply respect the often invisible cost of their yes. One more foundational model is probability thinking. Life is inherently uncertain, and people who demand absolute certainty before taking action rarely move at all. Probability thinking allows you to make intelligent decisions without the guarantee of certainty. You ask, "What is the likelihood this works?" And critically, what is the reward if I'm right, balanced against the cost if I'm wrong? This model protects you from both reckless gambling and paralyzing indecision. It empowers you to act with clarity and calculated risk in inherently uncertain environments. Of course, not all mental models are purely analytical. Some are deeply psychological, offering profound insights into human behavior, including your own. For example, understanding confirmation bias teaches you that humans have a powerful, innate tendency to seek out information, confirms their existing beliefs, and to unconsciously avoid information that challenges them. Knowing this helps you proactively correct your own thinking before this insidious bias distorts your judgment and leads you astray. Another crucial psychological model is loss aversion, which explains why people often fear losing something they already possess far more intensely than they value gaining something of equal objective value. Understanding loss aversion helps you comprehend why individuals, organizations, and even entire societies often resist change, even when that change would demonstrably benefit them in the long run. Smart thinkers do not memorize mental models merely to sound intelligent or to impress others. They use them diligently and consistently to navigate reality more effectively, more precisely. They actively build a diverse toolbox of these conceptual frameworks. They understand that no single model works for every situation. Life is far too complex for one-size-fits-all solutions. As the old adage wisely states, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Dangerous intelligence demands variety, different tools for different types of problems. Here is another profound benefit. Mental models significantly reduce emotional decision-making. When you have well-established frameworks guiding your thought process, motion transforms from a dictatorial instruction into valuable information. The model provides the structure. The emotion informs the context. That is how you maintain rationality under intense pressure. That is how you become consistently strategic, instead of predictably impulsive. But there is something even more powerful than individual models: the synergistic ability to combine them. When first principles thinking meets opportunity cost, or when inversion meets probability thinking, or when second-order thinking is applied to loss aversion, your intelligence compounds exponentially. This combination increases the accuracy of your predictions, enhances your foresight, and amplifies your strategic advantage. Training yourself in the diligent use of mental models also fundamentally changes how you learn. Instead of passively memorizing isolated facts, you actively extract the underlying mechanics, the operating principles. You do not just ask, "What happened?" You ask the deeper question, "What principle or force made that outcome inevitable or highly probable?" That transformative shift converts you from someone who merely knows answers to someone who profoundly understands processes. And understanding processes is the ultimate source of adaptability. When environments change, when new challenges arise, you adjust quickly and effectively because your thinking is not rigidly tied to a single context. It is rooted in adaptable, transferable principles. Finally, the more mental models you diligently apply, the more you will realize that reality is inherently structured. It is not, as it often appears, random chaos. There are underlying patterns, powerful incentives, and predictable forces influencing everything around you. When you learn to identify and comprehend these fundamental forces, you stop being perpetually surprised by outcomes. You stop being easily manipulated by emotional appeals. You stop being overwhelmed by apparent complexity. Instead, you begin to think clearly, act strategically, and move through life with a quiet, undeniable advantage. Mental models do not make you robotic. They make you profoundly effective. They allow you to think in sophisticated frameworks instead of reactive impulses. And when you can think faster and better than the average person, you inevitably get ahead in a world where most people are simply struggling to keep up. Chapter 9. Observe more, talk less, understand better. One of the most underestimated, yet profoundly effective, forms of intelligence is observation. Not the passive, casual glance, but the focused, intentional kind. The kind that pays meticulous attention to the subtle details, the recurring patterns, the unspoken reactions, the hidden motives, the crucial timing, the intricate context, and the unfolding outcomes. When you consciously commit to observing deeply, you begin to understand how the world actually works rather than how you merely wish it worked. You begin to discern what people truly mean, often beyond the superficial words they say, and you start to anticipate situations and behaviors rather than being perpetually surprised or blindsided by them. Talking, of course, has its place. It is essential for communication, for connection, for leadership. But observing gives you the raw, unfiltered data that intelligent talking requires. Observation builds profound understanding. Talking, by itself, merely broadcasts your existing understanding or lack thereof. Consider this dynamic. People who talk too much often reveal too much. They inadvertently expose their intentions, their fears, their priorities, their insecurities, and their desires. They essentially hand over valuable intelligence about themselves. People who observe, on the other hand, diligently collect those revelations. The less you speak, the more information you tend to gather, and the more information you possess, the more strategically and effectively you can act. This does not imply becoming silent or perpetually withholding. It means consciously valuing information intake before information output. Smart, tactical communication always starts with deep understanding, and deep understanding, without exception, begins with meticulous observation. When you observe, you are not just watching. You are actively interpreting, connecting dots, and inferring. For example, noticing how someone treats a person from whom they can gain absolutely no benefit, a service worker, a junior colleague, or someone perceived as less powerful, tells you far more about their genuine character than how they behave when they are actively trying to impress someone important. Noticing who speaks first in a high-stakes negotiation often tells you who is attempting to control the frame, to set the initial terms. Noticing how someone responds under intense pressure or crisis reveals whether they possess the emotional fortitude and discipline required for true responsibility. Intelligence is not always about having the right answers. Sometimes it is profoundly about seeing the right things. Observation also acts as a powerful shield, protecting you from illusions and superficial appearances. People often make the costly mistake of taking situations entirely at face value. They assume that visible success automatically equates to underlying competence. They assume that overt confidence inherently signals deep capability. They assume that eloquent talk inevitably translates into decisive action. But when you observe closely, with a discerning eye, you quickly learn that life is replete with false signals, misdirection, and carefully constructed facades. Some people achieve success purely due to fortuitous timing, not genuine talent. Some individuals sound incredibly knowledgeable but possess no real depth or understanding. Some situations that appear utterly chaotic are, in fact, highly predictable once you understand the underlying patterns. The ability to consistently see past superficial appearances and discern the underlying reality is one of the most valuable forms of intelligence you can cultivate. To develop truly stronger observational skills, you must consciously, deliberately slow down your default process of interpretation. Most people analyze too quickly. They label too quickly. They judge too quickly. This rapid, superficial interpretation feels efficient in the moment, but it invariably reduces accuracy and depth of understanding. Being dangerously smart requires not just speed of thought, but, more importantly, precision of thought. And precision demands patience. You must consciously give yourself enough mental space to pause and ask, what is really happening here, beyond the obvious? What are the true, underlying drivers of this behavior? What are the overt and covert incentives at play? What are the unspoken rules, the hidden power dynamics? One of the most useful areas to apply enhanced observation is in the realm of conflict. When tensions inevitably rise, people reveal their genuine values, their true priorities, and their authentic character. The calm individuals reveal their profound discipline. The insecure reveal their fragile ego. The manipulative reveal their cunning tactics. The honest reveal their unshakable integrity. You can often learn more about a person in 5 minutes of intense conflict than in 5 hours of casual, superficial conversation. Quiet observers gain a profound psychological advantage because they are diligently gathering critical information, while others are too consumed by their own emotions to do anything but react. Observation also applies to the crucial element of timing. In countless situations, impeccable timing matters far more than raw talent, sheer effort, or even brilliant ideas. Saying the right thing at the wrong time is often indistinguishable from saying the wrong thing entirely. Making a bold, aggressive move too early is often the same as being utterly unprepared. Taking decisive action too late is indistinguishable from completely missing the opportunity. Observing and understanding the dynamics of timing teaches you profound humility, because it forces you to recognize that sustained success often belongs not solely to the strongest or the smartest, but to the one who consistently recognizes when the time is truly right to act. Another incredibly helpful practice is to cultivate the ability to observe without the automatic need to insert yourself into the situation. Many people listen only to formulate their own reply. They watch only to judge or to find fault. They enter conversations only to share their own experiences or to dominate the spotlight. But you will learn exponentially more by allowing the moment to unfold naturally, without your ego or biases interfering. This allows you to gather clean data, information that has not been distorted by your own need to be heard, your desire to be included, or your preconceived notions. Strategic people are profoundly comfortable not being the center of attention. In fact, they often actively prefer it, knowing the valuable intelligence it allows them to gather. Talking less also subtly builds mystique. In a world saturated with constant noise, ceaseless chatter, and overwhelming self-promotion, quietness stands out. The quieter and more composed you are, the more others tend to project their own assumptions and expectations onto you, assumptions that can often strategically serve your interests. People tend to reveal more about themselves when they do not feel they are in direct competition for attention or airspace. They reveal their unspoken plans. They disclose their underlying motives. They expose their vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Silence creates space, and space, paradoxically, encourages disclosure from others. The loud impress, the quiet extract. Now, let us connect observation to the ultimate meta skill, learning. Observation dramatically accelerates learning because it significantly reduces the number of painful mistakes you have to make yourself. You do not always need direct, personal experience to gain wisdom. You can learn profoundly from the failures, the miscalculations, and the hard-won victories of others, simply by watching closely and analytically. Every industry, every social environment, every human interaction contains invaluable lessons for the diligent observer. The entire world, then, transforms into your personal classroom, and life itself becomes your most profound instructor. This chapter closes with a simple, yet profound, truth. Intelligence is not just about knowing more facts. It is fundamentally about perceiving more, seeing deeper, wider, and with greater nuance. The person who sees clearly understands deeply. The person who understands deeply makes vastly better decisions. And the person who consistently makes better decisions inevitably gains better, more strategic outcomes. Observing more and talking less is not about being silent for silence's sake. It is about being meticulously prepared. It is about diligently gathering enough critical data to act strategically, to speak wisely, and to move through life with profound awareness instead of perpetual, costly guessing. Chapter 10. Master emotional control to avoid dumb decisions. Intelligence, no matter how formidable, collapses the moment unbridled emotion takes over, not because emotion is inherently bad. Indeed, emotions are vital parts of the human experience, but because intense, unchecked emotion profoundly narrows perception. When you are gripped by fear, you tend to see only danger, amplifying risks and paralyzing action. When you are consumed by anger, you perceive only offense, driving you towards impulsive, destructive retaliation. When you are swept away by excitement, you see only opportunity, blinding you to potential costs and risks. Emotion, left unchecked, acts as a powerful hijack, seizing the brain's ability to accurately evaluate reality. And when reality is distorted, decisions become reckless, irrational, and almost invariably disastrous. If you are serious about becoming dangerously smart, you must learn a critical skill, the ability to maintain your clarity, your strategic thinking, and your composure, even while the world around you actively tries to provoke you. You must learn to think before reacting, to respond with intentionality instead of exploding with impulse, and to stay remarkably steady when others around you are visibly falling apart. Smart thinking, then, is not solely analytical. It is profoundly emotional. It requires a deep mastery over your innate impulses, your visceral urges, and your psychological triggers. Consider how many disastrous decisions, both in individual lives and in the grand sweep of history, have stemmed not from a lack of intelligence, but from a profound lack of emotional restraint. Fortunes wasted on impulse purchases, driven by fleeting desire. Relationships irrevocably destroyed by explosive anger. Promising careers derailed by unchecked pride or fragile ego. Transformative opportunities missed due to paralyzing fear. Emotional reactions often feel incredibly powerful, even righteous, in the immediate moment, but they almost invariably create deep, lasting regret in the aftermath. The true damage becomes brutally visible later, when the initial emotion has dissipated and clarity finally returns. But by then, the consequences remain, indelible and often irreversible. Dangerously smart people consciously protect themselves from this insidious pattern by systematically building emotional distance between a stimulus and their response. They do not rush to react. They do not speak immediately when provoked. They do not escalate conflict without deliberate purpose. They do not make significant financial decisions when euphoric or in a state of panic. Instead, they consciously, deliberately wait for the emotional surge to settle, allowing their rational, strategic mind to catch up. This deceptively simple habit, consistently applied, prevents countless bad outcomes and saves them from untold future pain. Delayed reactions, understood strategically, are not signs of weakness. They are profound signs of self-control and disciplined intelligence. True control comes from deep self-awareness. You simply cannot manage what you cannot detect within yourself. Most people only realize they have acted emotionally after the damage is done, after the words are spoken, after the impulsive choice is made. Smart thinkers, however, diligently learn to recognize their own personal triggers. They study how their body reacts when an emotion begins to rise, how their mind tightens its focus, how their perception narrows. Once you can consistently recognize the onset of an intense emotion, you create a crucial window to interrupt the automatic, unthinking response. That moment of interruption is the precise opening through which strategy, clarity, and intentionality can enter. Let us talk about fear for a moment. Fear, while a natural protective mechanism, often shrinks possibilities. It stops people from taking necessary risks, from speaking their truth honestly, from moving purposefully toward their most important goals. But fear does not always, inherently, signal genuine danger. Sometimes it signals the presence of growth. Sometimes it signals the presence of growth. Sometimes it signals the presence of growth. Sometimes it simply signals lack of experience, which can be remedied through learning and action. Dangerously smart thinkers do not ask, "How do I get rid of fear entirely?" That is often an impossible and counterproductive question. Instead, they ask, "What is this fear trying to tell me? Is it genuinely protecting me from harm, or is it merely limiting me from potential growth?" That critical distinction transforms fear from a paralyzing enemy into valuable, actionable data. Anger is another powerful emotion that frequently derails intelligence. Anger compresses time. It pushes people into immediate, often explosive, action. Action that feels righteous and justified in the heat of the moment, but often appears foolish, even destructive, in hindsight. To master anger is not to suppress it completely, which can be unhealthy, but to channel it. Anger possesses immense energy. It can bring a fierce clarity. It can imbue you with urgency. When that raw energy is strategically directed toward self-improvement, toward solving a problem, or toward advocating for justice, instead of toward retaliation or ego gratification, it becomes a powerful fuel for positive growth and change. When directed toward revenge, blame, or the preservation of a fragile ego, it becomes pure destruction. Emotional mastery is ultimately about consciously choosing where that powerful energy goes. The answer is excitement. Excitement feels inherently positive, but it is just as dangerous as fear or anger for objective decision-making. Unchecked excitement blinds people to costs, to inherent risks, and to long-term impact. It creates an exaggerated, often irrational, confidence. It pushes people into making commitments they cannot possibly sustain, or into taking actions without adequate preparation. Whether in investing, launching a business, entering a relationship, or embarking on a self-improvement program, unbridled excitement can lead you to drastically overestimate your abilities and dangerously underestimate the potential consequences. Smart thinkers pair excitement with patience and disciplined analysis. They allow excitement to inspire action, to provide motivation, but never, ever to dictate their decisions. Ego also plays a powerful and often destructive role in emotional decision-making. Ego demands to be right, even when wrong. Ego demands to win at all costs, even if the cost is self-defeating. Ego demands recognition and validation, often above all else. The fundamental problem with ego-driven decisions is that they invariably trade effectiveness for fleeting validation. They sacrifice long-term strategy for short-term pride. They exchange enduring advantage for immediate, superficial satisfaction. When ego is in control, losing a small, trivial argument feels like a catastrophic disaster, and winning it feels like an epic victory, even if that victory costs you something far more important, like a relationship, a reputation, or a critical learning opportunity. Emotional mastery requires a profound humility, not because humility makes you submissive, but precisely because it makes you strategically intelligent. Pride fights for appearances. Strategy fights for outcomes. A major, often defining, component of emotional intelligence is the unwavering ability to stay calm under intense pressure. Calmness is an enormous competitive advantage. In any high-stakes environment, business negotiation, a leadership crisis, a personal challenge, calm person inevitably possesses greater control over the situation, precisely because they maintain greater control over themselves. Panic destroys problem-solving ability, turning a capable mind into a frantic one. Calmness preserves it, allowing your cognitive faculties to operate at their peak. Panic makes you purely reactive, always chasing the tail of the problem. Calmness keeps you proactive, allowing you to observe, assess, and choose the most effective response. Here is a useful mental model to internalize. Never, ever make significant decisions at emotional extremes. Do not make financial decisions when euphoric or terrified. Do not make relationship decisions when heartbroken or infatuated. Do not make major career decisions when intensely frustrated or profoundly bored. Wait until your internal emotional weather stabilizes. Emotional storms warp your perception, making the world look distorted and dangerous. When the storm passes, when the waters calm, the landscape reveals itself accurately, clearly, and you can make choices from a place of strategic insight. To close this chapter, remember this profound truth. Intelligence is not just measured by what you know, but by what you can resist. The smartest people are not those who never feel emotion. On the contrary, they feel deeply, authentically. But crucially, they do not permit temporary feelings to dictate permanent consequences. When you master your emotions, you protect your judgment. When you protect your judgment, you protect your future. And that, my friend, is one of the most defining and powerful traits of someone who is truly becoming dangerously smart. Chapter 11. Develop tactical communication skills. The ability to think clearly, precisely, and strategically is, without doubt, immensely powerful. But the ability to communicate clearly, compellingly, and tactically multiplies that power exponentially. Being dangerously smart is not just about knowing what to do. It is about influencing outcomes, shaping perceptions, and transmitting your ideas in a way that persuades, aligns, and strategically moves people to action. Communication, at its core, is leverage. It allows you to effectively collaborate, skillfully negotiate, build powerful alliances, artfully avoid unnecessary conflict, and create opportunities that even the most brilliant solitary thinking could never manifest alone. However, most people communicate reactively. They speak primarily to express emotion, to vent frustration, or to assert their ego, not to achieve specific, predefined objectives. Tactical communication, on the other hand, is fundamentally different. It is intentional, measured, and meticulously strategic. The first, and arguably most important, principle of tactical communication is clarity. Unclear, ambiguous communication is the breeding ground for confusion, and confusion invariably breeds conflict. Many arguments, misunderstandings, and missed opportunities do not stem from genuine disagreement. They originate from a lack of clarity, from ambiguity. Smart communicators say precisely what they mean, without forcing others to decode hidden signals, interpret vague hints, or read between lines. They choose words and phrases that minimize any room for misinterpretation. They carefully frame their messages based on the specific audience and the desired outcome, not on their own ego or impulse. Communication is not about sounding impressive or intelligent. It is, fundamentally, about being understood. The second principle is restraint. In communication, timing and dosage matter just as much, if not more, than the content itself. Just because you can say something does not automatically mean you should. And just because something is objectively true does not mean it needs to be spoken immediately or in every context. Strategic communicators do not rush to fill silence. They listen intently, they observe carefully, and they speak only when their words will have maximum impact and serve a clear, strategic purpose. Silence is not a sign of weakness. It is a powerful tool. Silence often compels others to reveal more, to fill the void. It forces negotiation partners to make the next move, exposing their hand. It gives you invaluable space to think, to process, and to plan your next strategic utterance. The fundamental difference between impulsive communication and tactical communication is this: one reacts, the other positions. Listening is another high-level communication skill, often overlooked in a world obsessed with talking. Listening is your primary method for gathering crucial information, understanding the full context, and detecting the often unspoken subtext beneath the words. Most people listen only enough to formulate their own reply, waiting for their turn to speak. Smart communicators, however, listen enough to understand deeply. They meticulously study tone, timing, hesitations, contradictions, and subtle emotional signals. They pay attention not only to what is being explicitly said, but also, critically, to what is being avoided. Information often hides an avoidance. When someone pointedly refuses to answer a direct question, they are, in fact, answering it indirectly. When someone over-explains or defends too much, they are often unconsciously revealing a weakness or insecurity. Listening, with a strategic ear, reveals far more than talking ever will. Another essential component of tactical communication is framing. Framing is the conscious way you package and present a message or idea. People respond less to the raw information itself and far more to how that information is framed. For example, telling someone, "You are wrong," immediately invites resistance, defensiveness, and shuts down dialogue. Framing it as, "Here is another angle we might consider," or "Perhaps we could explore this from a different perspective," invites openness, curiosity, and collaboration. The underlying content might be identical, but the response it elicits is profoundly different. Framing determines whether an idea is accepted, resisted, or simply ignored. Dangerously smart communicators understand psychology well enough to consciously choose frames that reduce friction, build rapport, and increase receptivity. But communication is not only about conveying meaning, it is also about adeptly managing conflict. Conflict is an inevitable part of life, especially for people who are ambitious, strategic, or committed to growth. Most people handle conflict emotionally, allowing small disagreements to escalate into large, destructive wars. Tactical communicators, conversely, handle conflict with precision and surgical intent. They do not fight every battle. They choose their conflicts as a chess player chooses squares, intentionally and strategically. They do not react to every insult or provocation. They do not feel compelled to defend every accusation. Sometimes, the smartest tactical move is to de-escalate. Sometimes, it is to redirect attention. And sometimes, the most intelligent move is to disengage completely, preserving precious resources for more important battles. Influence. Z is another advanced layer of communication. Influence, in this context, does not mean manipulation or coercion. Influence means consistently getting others to act willingly, out of their own volition. without the need for force, threats, or explicit demands. Smart communicators do not demand. They guide. They do not overpower with authority. They align incentives, showing others how their interests are served by your proposal. They do not argue to win points. They persuade to shift viewpoints. They understand that true persuasion is not about proving yourself right, but about helping the other person discover a new, more advantageous perspective. They often ask better questions rather than delivering long, declarative explanations. Questions force the other person to think, to engage their own intellect. Explanations, conversely, often involve debate or passive reception. Influence grows from genuine alignment, not from imposed domination. Negotiation is tactical communication in its highest form. In a negotiation, everything matters. What is explicitly said? What is deliberately left unsaid? The precise order of statements, the pace and rhythm of the conversation, the body language and posture of each party, and critically, the alternatives each person has available outside of the current deal. Good negotiators meticulously ask themselves, what does the other side actually want beneath their stated positions? What are their deepest fears? What pressures are they currently under? What outcome would constitute a genuine win for them? Dumb negotiators, tragically, care only about what they want, leading to impasses or suboptimal outcomes. Smart negotiators prioritize understanding what will work for all parties involved, leading to more creative and sustainable agreements. And then there is the crucial communication of boundaries. Boundaries are absolutely essential because unmanaged, undirected communication inevitably leads to resentment, overcommitment, or exploitation. Boundaries are not rigid walls designed to keep people out. These are clear lines designed to protect your priorities, your energy, and your time. Tactical communicators set boundaries early, clearly, and unapologetically. Boundaries become significantly easier to enforce when stated calmly, directly, and without defensiveness or excessive justification. When you say no with quiet conviction, without panic or elaborate excuses, people gradually learn to respect your limits and your value. Finally, tactical communication, at its apex, demands profound self-awareness. You must understand how you come across to others, how your words are likely to be interpreted, and how your emotional tone and nonverbal cues profoundly shape perception. Communication is not just what you say, it is how you say it, when you say it, and crucially, to whom you say it. The smartest communicators are adaptable masters of context. They can speak simply and clearly to explain complex ideas to a novice. They can speak firmly and authoritatively to assert leadership. They can speak softly and empathetically to build trust and rapport. They can speak slowly and deliberately to convey confidence and gravitas. And sometimes, most powerfully, they can choose to say nothing at all, thereby maintaining power, gathering information, and allowing others to reveal themselves. In the end, tactical communication is not a luxury skill reserved for the elite. It is a fundamental strategic advantage for anyone seeking to navigate a complex world with intelligence and effectiveness. It builds trust, resolves friction before it escalates, influences outcomes, and relentlessly opens doors to new opportunities. When you develop and refine your tactical communication skills, you stop losing opportunities because you meant well but expressed yourself poorly. You stop damaging crucial relationships because you reacted emotionally rather than strategically. You stop being perpetually misunderstood because you communicated ambiguously. And you begin to move through the world with a level of precision that makes your intelligence visibly effective, undeniably powerful, and quietly formidable. Chapter 12. Use time as a strategic weapon. Time. It is the most democratic currency on earth. Everyone, without exception, receives precisely the same amount each day. But only a privileged few, dangerously smart, truly know how to invest it. They do not merely manage time. They weaponize it, They use time deliberately and strategically to create insurmountable advantage, to gain exponential leverage, to compound skills beyond recognition, to outlast even the fiercest competition, and to artfully escape the urgency traps that keep others perpetually stuck in the shallow end of life. While the majority of people frantically chase speed, fastest way to achieve a goal, the quickest path to success, strategic thinkers prioritize sequencing. They understand that merely moving fast in the wrong order can be counterproductive, even destructive. While others ask, how fast can I get there? The dangerously smart ask, what is the smartest order of moves? What sequence of actions will create the most efficient, durable, and compounding outcome? To truly use time strategically, you must first internalize a profound truth. Time is not equal for everyone, even if the clock ticks the same for all. Two individuals can spend the exact same hour in vastly different ways. One generating significant progress, the other merely generating distraction and busy work. What makes the difference is not busyness. It is direction. Busyness is motion without strategy, a hamster wheel of activity. Productivity is motion with intentionality, purpose-driven action. Leverage is motion with compounding returns, actions that yield disproportionate future value. When you begin to think about time through these layered distinctions, you stop glorifying frantic hustle and start profoundly respecting elegant effectiveness. One of the most important time-based skills is prioritization. Most people treat all tasks as if they carry the same weight, the same urgency, the same potential impact. But in reality, very few tasks truly matter. A small number of critical tasks produce the vast majority of your impact, your progress, your results. A large number of tasks, conversely, produce little more than noise and illusion of productivity. The dangerously smart relentlessly identify the vital few tasks, the ones that genuinely move the needle, the actions that create momentum, unlock new opportunities, or generate compounding returns. Everything else is either deliberately delayed, skillfully delegated, cleverly automated, or ruthlessly eliminated. Their calendar is a fortress for their priorities. Another crucial aspect of using time as a strategic weapon is understanding sequencing. Doing things in the wrong order inevitably slows you down, even if you are working incredibly hard. Most major breakthroughs in science, in business, in personal development come from correct, intelligent sequencing. It is learning before acting, preparing thoroughly before scaling, diligently building the foundation before loudly promoting the structure. People often waste colossal amounts of time, not because they are inherently slow or lazy, but because they are doing the right things at the wrong stage of the process. Smart thinkers constantly ask, what absolutely must come first for the next step to be significantly easier, more efficient, and more likely to succeed? That single question, deeply considered, can save years of wasted effort. There is also a deep, symbiotic connection between time and patience. Patience, in our instant gratification culture, often has a rather boring, even weak, reputation. But strategically, it is an advantage multiplier of epic proportions. When you cultivate the capacity to wait longer than the average person, to delay gratification, you unlock profound strategic advantages. You can pursue opportunities that others abandon too early out of impatience. You can build skills to a level of mastery that others stop too soon. You can hold strategic positions while others exit in a panic. Patience is not passive inaction. It is disciplined, intentional endurance. It allows the inexorable force of compounding to work tirelessly in your favor. Impatience, on the other hand, tragically interrupts compounding just before it becomes powerful, severing the exponential growth curve. Let us consider the opposite side of the coin. Urgency. Urgency certainly has its place. Genuine emergencies demand immediate action, but it should never be your default mode of operation. Constant, self-imposed urgency creates shallow thinking, rushed, often flawed decisions, and a perpetually frantic, stressful way of living. People living under constant urgency do not plan deeply. They do not reflect thoughtfully. They do not strategically position themselves. They simply react, flitting from one perceived crisis to the next. When you live in perpetual reaction, you are always, by definition, one step behind the situation, constantly playing catch-up. When you live in preparation, however, the situation rarely catches you off guard. Using time strategically means deliberately creating pockets of slowness, spaces for deep work and reflection, in a world that relentlessly worships speed and constant activity. Another foundational time principle is, once again, compounding. Small, consistent decisions, multiplied faithfully over long horizons, create massive, often unbelievable, outcomes. For better, for worse. 10 pages of reading a day, consistently, turns into dozens of profound books consumed over years. 10 minutes of deliberate skill practice each day becomes true mastery over months and years. $10 invested consistently, even small amounts, blossoms into substantial wealth through the magic of compounding interest. The opposite is equally true and equally insidious. 10 minutes of mindless distraction compounded daily, $10 of impulse spending repeatedly, 10 days of procrastination on a crucial task. These compound negatively, slowly eroding your potential. The dangerously smart study compounding not just in the realm of finance, but in their relationships, their health, their habits, and their accumulation of knowledge. Time also critically intersects with energy. A day, in the strategic sense, is not merely measured in hours, it is measured in usable energy. You can waste 4 hours feeling tired, distracted, and accomplish absolutely nothing of value. Or you can produce extraordinary, high-quality work in a single hour of peak, focused energy. Strategic people meticulously protect their energy windows. They understand when they think best, when they focus best, and when they are most creative and productive. They deliberately schedule their most important, high-impact work during those peak windows, instead of allowing them to be consumed by meaningless tasks, trivial interruptions, or reactive obligations. Now, we need to talk about long-term versus short-term time horizons. Most people operate almost exclusively within a 24-hour frame. Their decisions are optimized for today. Today's comfort, today's pleasure, today's immediate relief, today's easiest path. Strategic thinkers, conversely, live in multi-year horizons. They consistently ask, what does this decision, this action, this habit look like in 3 years? In 5 years? In 10 years? When you deliberately stretch your time horizon, your standards automatically rise. Short-term thinking makes immediate comfort look irresistibly attractive. Long-term thinking, however, makes disciplined growth look undeniably necessary. Time also serves as a powerful filter. When someone tells you what they value, ignore their words, however eloquent, and look instead at how they allocate their time. Time exposes true priorities. If someone loudly proclaims that their health matters, but consistently allocates 0 hours to exercise, nutrition, or sleep, then, by the undeniable evidence of their time, it does not truly matter to them. If someone claims that learning is vital, but invests no time or energy into reading, studying, or active skill acquisition, then, again, it does not truly matter. Time reveals truth, because time, unlike words, cannot lie. Where you consistently spend your time ultimately determines who you become. Finally, using time as a strategic weapon means ruthlessly eliminating time leaks. A time leak is any activity, habit, or relationship that consistently consumes your time without producing any commensurate value, progress, or genuine fulfillment. Unproductive drama is a time leak. Excessive, paralyzing overthinking is a time leak. Consuming social media out of envy or comparison is a time leak. Chronic procrastination is a time leak. Unnecessary obligations and commitments taken on out of fear or misplaced guilt are time leaks. Low quality, passive entertainment, beyond intentional rest, is a time leak. None of these destroy you quickly or dramatically. They destroy you slowly, quietly, invisibly. They steal years of your life, one small, imperceptible increment at a time. To close this chapter, understand this profound distinction. The dangerously smart do not magically possess more time than anyone else. They simply treat time fundamentally differently. They value it deeply. They protect it fiercely. They invest it wisely. They sequence it intelligently. They compound it relentlessly. And because of that, they get more life out of their years, more progress, more meaning, more impact, more growth. While others may get more years out of their life, but tragically, far less life in those years. When time transforms from a fleeting commodity into a strategic weapon, you stop losing by default, swayed by every passing whim. You start winning by meticulous, intentional design. Chapter 13. Build leverage, tools, skills, and people. One of the defining, yet often subtle, traits of dangerously smart thinkers is that they do not rely solely on brute force or individual effort. They possess a profound understanding that raw, unassisted effort has inherent limits. There are only so many hours you can physically work, so much energy you can expend, and so much attention you can give up for hitting a ceiling. Meanwhile, the truly significant problems of life, business, and personal growth often demand far more than any single person can supply, through sheer effort alone. That, my friend, is precisely where leverage comes in. Leverage is the strategic ability to do more with less time, less energy, less personal effort, by intelligently employing tools, cultivating high-value skills, and strategically engaging with people. It is about creating a disproportionate effect from your input. Let us begin with tools. Tools are force multipliers. They allow you to accomplish tasks faster, better, and more consistently than you ever could with your bare hands or unassisted mind. Technology is an obvious category. Sophisticated software automates repetitive tasks. Powerful machines increase physical output. Digital platforms create massive distribution channels for your ideas and products. But tools are not only digital or mechanical. A well-designed calendar is a potent tool. A disciplined journaling practice is a powerful tool for reflection. A meticulously crafted checklist is a tool for error prevention. A clearly defined system for a recurring process is itself a tool. Tools do not just increase productivity, they fundamentally decrease friction. And when friction is significantly reduced, consistency becomes sustainable. And consistency, let us be clear, is where all truly significant, long-term results reside. However, tools are only one form of leverage. Skills are another, and often an even more profound, enduring form of leverage. Skills, unlike tools, compound within you over time. The ability to communicate effectively, to sell persuasively, to negotiate skillfully, to write clearly and compellingly, to learn new concepts quickly, to manage your emotions under pressure, to think strategically across complex domains. These are high-leverage skills. They give you leverage because they are universally applicable across countless environments and situations. A person with a highly leveraged skill does not need to work as many hours or exert as much raw effort to produce immense value. They produce value through the quality and precision of their input, not just the quantity. Consider communication as a prime example. Someone who can communicate with crystal clarity can align diverse teams faster, persuade reluctant clients more effectively, resolve brewing conflicts before they escalate into open warfare, and teach complex concepts without generating confusion. That single, well-honed skill saves countless hours, protects invaluable relationships, accelerates progress, and consistently creates new opportunities. Skill-based leverage is one of the highest return investments a person can ever make because skills travel with you everywhere you go. They are not tied to one job, one company, one city, or even one historical era. They are portable, adaptable, and perpetually valuable. But leverage becomes truly exponential, truly powerful, when it intelligently involves people. People leverage is often tragically misunderstood. It does not mean using people in a cynical, exploitative sense. It means collaborating intelligently, recognizing that no matter how talented or brilliant you are as an individual, you cannot scale yourself to infinity. Smart thinkers understand this fundamental truth and therefore diligently build networks, cultivate alliances, assemble high-performing teams, forge strategic partnerships, and nurture communities. They understand a simple, undeniable truth. A solo player can be exceptional, but coordinated players win championships. People leverage works through the powerful principle of specialization. One person should not attempt to do everything. Instead, each person should focus on doing what they do best, while others, equally skilled, do what they do best. That is how you dramatically increase output, multiply impact, and accelerate progress without simultaneously increasing stress and burnout for any one individual. When you consciously surround yourself with capable, aligned, and competent people, your life naturally expands in possibilities and reach. Conversely, when you surround yourself with needy, chaotic, or unmotivated individuals, your life inevitably contracts. The quality of the people in your inner circle either profoundly accelerates or subtly dilutes your personal and professional trajectory. Now, let us talk about another vital form of leverage: capital. Capital can be financial, of course, money that can be invested, spent, or deployed to acquire time, talent, and tools. But capital can also be non-financial: credibility, reputation, brand equity, or trust. Money creates leverage because it can directly purchase other forms of leverage: hot time of experts, the talent of specialists, the most advanced tools. Reputation creates leverage because it attracts opportunities, clients, and partners that others must desperately chase. Trust creates immense leverage because it dramatically reduces friction, costs, and time in all relationships and transactions. Capital, in all its forms, gives you optionality, and optionality, in a complex world, is a profound form of intelligence. There is also leverage through distribution. Your written words, your recorded videos, your software, your carefully constructed systems, your products, these continue to work, to generate value, to reach audiences, even when you are physically sleeping or engaged elsewhere. That is the essence of time leverage. When you expend effort to produce something once, but it continues to produce value repeatedly, you escape the fundamental trap of perpetually trading hours for outcomes. The dangerously smart consistently think beyond simple one-to-one exchanges of time for money. They build assets, whether intellectual, digital, or physical, to do the heavy lifting for them, creating enduring value. However, it is crucial to understand that leverage does not work effectively without a bedrock of clarity. You cannot build effective leverage on a foundation of confusion or ambiguity. You must possess a crystal-clear understanding of what you are trying to accomplish, what your inherent strengths are, and critically, what weaknesses or inefficiencies must be addressed, either by deploying the right tools or by strategically engaging the right people. Leverage demands introspection. A key question to ask yourself is, what should I consciously stop doing myself? This is an uncomfortable question for many, as society often promotes an ideal of rugged self-reliance. But self-reliance, beyond a certain point, transforms into self-sabotage. Attempting to do everything yourself feels noble, is, in reality, profoundly inefficient and limiting. Delegation, outsourcing, automation, and deliberate collaboration are not escapes from responsibility. They are, in fact, evolutions of responsibility, allowing you to maximize your impact. Another point worth exploring: leverage demands patience. Tools must be learned and mastered. Skills must be diligently developed and refined over time. People must be carefully vetted, built into trust networks, and nurtured into high-performing teams. None of this happens overnight. Short-term thinkers often shy away from building leverage because they crave immediate, visible results. Long-term thinkers, conversely, eagerly invest in building leverage because they understand it yields exponential, compounding results. The return on building leverage accrues slowly at first, often invisibly, but then dramatically accelerates once the tools are integrated, the skills are honed, and the systems and teams mature. But there is a final, crucial nuance. Leverage amplifies both upside and downside. If you use the wrong tools, you can break things faster and more profoundly. If you develop the wrong skills, you misallocate precious energy and become highly efficient at the wrong things. If you trust the wrong people, you amplify chaos, betrayal, and inefficiency. And if you build a reputation carelessly, it can collapse under scrutiny, destroying your capital. Leverage, then, profoundly rewards responsibility, precision, and diligence, and it brutally punishes recklessness, laziness, and poor judgment. That is why dangerously smart people are meticulously selective. They choose their tools carefully, they choose their skills strategically, and they choose their people intentionally. In simple terms, leverage is the elegant art of increasing your output and impact without increasing your personal strain. It is the ultimate strategy for escaping the inherent limits of individual effort. Without leverage, success often feels like a treadmill. You run incredibly hard, expend enormous energy, but ultimately go nowhere. With intelligently applied leverage, success transforms into a robust staircase. You climb steadily, with each tool, skill, and person supporting and elevating the next step. And once powerful leverage systems are intelligently in place, you begin to experience something most people never feel: the profound sensation of life getting demonstrably easier, even as your goals become dramatically bigger and more ambitious. Chapter 14. Think in systems, not events. Dangerously smart people do not just react to what is happening. They do not merely chase the shiny object of the moment or respond to the latest crisis. Instead, they delve deeper. They meticulously study how things happen. They possess a profound understanding that outcomes, whether positive or negative, not random, isolated events. They are, almost without exception, the predictable byproduct of underlying systems. A system, in this context, is a coherent set of interconnected habits, powerful incentives, organizational structures, reinforcing feedback loops, and intricate relationships that consistently, over time, produce a certain result. When you cultivate the habit of thinking in systems, you stop being perpetually surprised by outcomes. Why? Because you begin to understand the fundamental, underlying mechanics that consistently produce them. When you think only in isolated events, life often feels chaotic, unpredictable, and entirely arbitrary. You might celebrate a stroke of luck when things go well and lament the cruelty of fate when things go poorly. Systems thinking, however, replaces the capricious whims of luck and fate with the profound clarity of cause and effect. Let us take health as a concrete example. Most people, unfortunately, treat health as an event. They react after they get sick, rushing to medical intervention. They panic after they gain significant weight, scrambling for a quick fix. They try to fix their exhaustion immediately, rather than understanding its root causes. But health is fundamentally not an event. It is a complex, interconnected system built upon consistent inputs like quality sleep, nutrient-rich nutrition, effective stress management, regular movement, and a supportive environment. When that system is healthy and well-maintained, the outcomes, vitality, energy, resilience, remarkably predictable. Conversely, when the system is neglected or broken, the outcomes, illness, fatigue, decline, equally predictable. The apparent unpredictability exists only in the minds of those who refuse to see, or are not trained to see, the underlying system at play. Your career, your financial outcomes, and even the quality of your relationships follow the exact same pattern. A promotion is not a sudden, random event. It is the culmination of a system of consistent skill building, deliberate visibility, sustained value creation, effective communication, and strategic relationship management. Wealth is not an event, like winning the lottery. It is the result of a disciplined system that consistently prioritizes earning, saving, investing, and allowing capital to compound over a long period. Even poverty is not merely an event. It is often the result of an underlying system, although frequently one that individuals did not consciously design or fully understand. When you deliberately shift to thinking in systems, you automatically start to ask dramatically better questions. Instead of just reacting, you ask, what system is consistently producing this particular outcome, whether desired or undesired? And then, what specific levers within this system can I adjust, modify, or redesign to predictably change the outcome? Systems thinking provides you with an immense advantage because it forces you to zoom out, to look beyond the immediate symptom and directly at the underlying structure. Most solutions fail or provide only temporary relief because they target symptoms rather than the root systemic causes. Someone who procrastinates, for example, might try to fix it with a burst of motivation, but procrastination is rarely, fundamentally, a motivation problem. It is often a system problem built upon unclear goals, poor planning, emotional avoidance, or an unconscious fear of imperfection. Fixing the underlying system, rather than fighting a dramatic battle of willpower against the symptom, is far more effective and sustainable. Another profound benefit of systems thinking is that it vividly reveals Etzer's feedback loops. Feedback loops are powerful forces that either reinforce and strengthen certain behaviors and outcomes over time, positive feedback loops, or weaken and diminish them, negative feedback loops. For example, the more someone deliberately practices a skill, the more confidence they gain. This increased confidence motivates them to practice even more, which further increases their skill. That is a powerful positive feedback loop. On the negative side, the more someone avoids a challenging task, the more anxiety grows around that task, which makes avoidance more likely, which in turn increases anxiety even further. When you learn to identify these feedback loops, you can intervene at the most strategic point in the cycle, rather than futilely treating the outcome as an unchangeable fate. Itimsi smart thinkers also possess a deep understanding of incentives. Incentives, both explicit and implicit, drive behavior far more reliably and powerfully than rules, admonitions, or even stated values. If you genuinely want to change a system, whether it is your own, your team's, or even a societal one, CHMI must primarily change the incentives. People, almost universally, do what they are rewarded for and avoid what they are punished for. This fundamental principle elegantly explains everything from corporate politics and economic trends to social movements, leadership failures, and even your own persistent personal habits. When incentives shift, behavior shifts. Event thinkers blame people. System thinkers adjust incentives. There is also a significant psychological layer here. Systems thinking dramatically reduces emotional volatility. When you truly understand the underlying mechanics and dynamics behind situations, you panic less, you blame less, you react less impulsively. Instead, you observe more, analyze more, and strategize more. A true systems thinker does not immediately ask, who is at fault? Their first question is, what structure, what process, what incentive system produced this outcome? That profound shift from personal blame to structural analysis invariably leads to more effective, sustainable solutions and significantly fewer unproductive conflicts. Thinking in systems also helps you avoid the pervasive trap of single variable thinking. Life is inherently multifactorial. Outcomes rarely, if ever, stem from a single, isolated cause. Someone who fails in business might mistakenly conclude, my product was not good enough, when the real problem was a complex interplay of poor distribution, misaligned pricing, ineffective marketing, unfortunate timing, or a lack of customer trust. Single variable thinkers latch onto the most visible or emotionally salient cause and completely miss the rich tapestry of other contributing factors. System thinkers, conversely, meticulously examine the entire web of causes, the interconnected forces. And when you understand that intricate web, your solutions become not only more effective, but also far more sophisticated and resilient. Systems thinking additionally empowers sophisticated long-term planning. When you profoundly understand how something works, its inputs, processes, and outputs, you can predict with remarkable accuracy how it will behave over time. Prediction, in this context, is not about mystical fortune-telling. It is about discerning predictable cause and effect relationships. For example, if you deliberately build a personal system that consistently rewards reading, active note-taking, deep reflection, and practical application, you can reliably predict a measurable increase in your intelligence and effectiveness over a period of years. If you build a system that rewards mindless scrolling, emotional avoidance of discomfort, and constant seeking of external stimulation, you can equally reliably predict a decrease in your attention span, your resilience, and your cognitive depth. The outcomes are not mysterious. They are simply systems playing out on their predetermined schedule. Perhaps the most transformative aspect of systems thinking is that it empowers you to design your life instead of merely experiencing it as a series of random events. You become less reactive and far more architectural. You consciously ask, what system would consistently produce the kind of life I truly desire? And then, with deliberate intention, you begin building that system, piece by painstaking piece, habit by habit, structure by structure. This is precisely how dangerously smart people create profound consistency in their lives without relying on the fickle, unreliable force of motivation. Motivation is indeed useful, but it is inherently unpredictable and unsustainable in the long run. Systems, when built well, are reliable. When the system is robustly designed and consistently maintained, the desired results often become automatic, almost inevitable. To close this chapter, remember this profound distinction. Events are easy. They grab your attention, spark your emotions, and dominate headlines. That systems are quiet. They operate beneath the surface, unnoticed by the casual observer. Events grab immediate attention, but systems, inexorably, determine long-term direction. If you truly want to change your life, stop trying to change single, isolated moments. Instead, focus your energy, your intellect, and your intentionality on changing the system that produces those moments. When you master the art of thinking in systems, life ceases to feel chaotic, overwhelming, or arbitrary. It transforms into something you can profoundly understand, intelligently influence, and ultimately, deliberately shape with conscious, strategic intention. Chapter 15. Learn how to learn. If you truly want to become dangerously smart, there is one meta skill that surpasses all others in its transformative power: the ability to learn quickly, deeply, and independently. Consider the relentless pace of our world. Knowledge becomes outdated with dizzying speed. Entire industries evolve or disappear. Technology disrupts traditional models at an unprecedented rate. Strategies that were once brilliant quickly expire. But the person who has mastered the art of learning how to learn stays perpetually relevant, inherently adaptable, and fiercely competitive, while everyone else struggles, often desperately, to keep up. Learning how to learn is the ultimate meta skill. Once you possess it, once you have internalized its principles and practices, every other skill, every new challenge, every complex domain becomes significantly easier to acquire and master. Most people mistakenly assume they already know how to learn because they attended school. But traditional schooling often prioritizes rote memorization over genuine understanding. It frequently rewards repetition over deep conceptual insight. It tests short-term recall over long-term application and integration. True learning is fundamentally different. It expands your cognitive capabilities. It profoundly changes how you think. It equips you to solve problems you could not even conceptualize before. It gives you entirely new tools and mental models to interact with reality. Memorization fades with time, but true transformation, born of deep learning, remains, reshaping your mind and your potential. The first principle of effective learning is curiosity. Curiosity is the engine that drives all genuine exploration. When you are truly curious, learning ceases to feel like laborious work and transforms into an exciting, self-sustaining process of discovery. Curiosity relentlessly asks, why does this work this way? What happens if I try this alternative approach? How could this be improved or optimized? Curiosity turns the entire world into your personal laboratory, an endless source of fascinating experiments and insights. Without curiosity, learning becomes mechanical, shallow, and quickly forgotten. With genuine curiosity, learning becomes natural, joyful, and profoundly self-sustaining. The second principle is connection. Your brain does not store information as isolated, disconnected facts. It stores information as intricate networks, as a vast, interconnected web of ideas and concepts. The more connections you consciously create between new information and your existing frameworks of understanding, the faster you learn and the more powerfully you remember. Smart thinkers instinctively connect new information to what they already know. They ask, what does this remind me of? Where else does this principle apply? How does this new piece of data fit into my existing mental maps? The brain loves patterns. Patterns create meaning. Nen's meaning, profound meaning, is what makes learning truly stick and become a permanent part of your intellectual arsenal. Another key principle is focus. Deep, effective learning absolutely requires sustained attention, and attention, unfortunately, is one of the scarcest commodities in our modern, hyper-stimulated world. Most people attempt to learn while multitasking, mindlessly scrolling, or in environments saturated with noise and distraction. But multitasking fragments cognition, preventing the deep processing required for true understanding. Deep learning demands deep focus. It requires consciously shutting down distractions long enough for your brain to fully engage with, process, and integrate new information. A single hour of intensely focused learning will invariably yield far greater results than 5 hours of scattered, fragmented exposure. The next principle is feedback. Feedback, when sought and applied correctly, dramatically accelerates learning because it closes the crucial gap between what you think you are doing and what you are actually doing. Musicians learn faster with expert instructors. Athletes improve rapidly with skilled coaches. Writers hone their craft more quickly with discerning editors. But feedback is not only external, it can be internal too. Self-feedback comes from disciplined reflection, consistent journaling, meticulous reviewing of your mistakes, and rigorous analysis of your outcomes. People who learn slowly often repeat the same errors over and over because they never pause to truly examine them. People who learn quickly extract lessons from every experience with ruthless, objective precision. Let us add an often overlooked, yet crucial, factor: error tolerance. Many people are absolutely terrified of making mistakes. They treat mistakes as undeniable proof of their incompetence or inherent limitations. Dangerously smart thinkers, however, treat mistakes as invaluable information. Every mistake you make, every error in judgment, every failed attempt, reveals a boundary or a limitation in your current understanding, your current strategy, or your current skill set. If you become defensive or offended by mistakes, the learning process effectively stops. If you become genuinely curious about your mistakes, if you approach them with an inquisitive, analytical mindset, the learning accelerates exponentially. The fastest, Most effective learners are often ones with the highest error tolerance, precisely because they accumulate feedback and refine their understanding rapidly, while others hesitate, paralyzed by the fear of failure. Another fundamental principle of learning is iteration. Learning is not a single exposure to a concept or a skill. It is a process of repeated exposure, interspersed with periods of deliberate practice, reflection, and continuous improvement. Iteration makes learning compound over time. You try, you get feedback, you adjust, you refine, you try again. Skills developed through consistent iteration become durable, adaptable, and deeply ingrained. Skills developed through last-minute cramming, conversely, become brittle, superficial, and quickly forgotten. This is precisely why diligent practice almost always outperforms mere theoretical knowledge. Theory introduces ideas. Practice introduces reality. We must also talk about compression. Modern intelligence increasingly requires the ability to compress large, complex amounts of information into simple, elegant, usable frameworks or core principles. Without compression, knowledge quickly becomes overwhelming, a vast, unmanageable ocean of facts. With effective compression, knowledge becomes powerful, actionable, and easily retrievable. For example, instead of trying to remember 50 disparate rules about money, you might internalize one powerful principle about compounding. Instead of memorizing endless grammatical rules about communication, you might internalize a simple framework about clarity, audience, and framing. Compression frees up valuable cognitive space, allowing your brain to focus on active problem solving and creative synthesis, rather than merely memorizing raw data. Now, consider speed. Learning fast is not about rushing through material. It is about maximizing efficiency and effectiveness. Asking incisive questions speeds up learning by directing your focus. Actively seeking out mentors or experts, either directly or through their written works, speeds up learning by providing condensed wisdom. Taking strategic notes, capturing patterns and insights, speeds up retention. And most powerfully, teaching others speeds up learning even more, because teaching forces you to clarify your own understanding, to simplify complex concepts, and to identify gaps in your knowledge. If you can explain something simply and clearly to another person, you truly understand it. If you cannot, you likely do not. This is why teaching is often the ultimate test of true learning. Your inspirement also profoundly shapes your learning capacity. Certain environments actively encourage exploration, facilitate rich dialogue, allow for safe experimentation, and foster genuine curiosity. Other environments, sadly, punish mistakes, actively discourage questions, or rigidly reward conformity. Smart learners either proactively change their environment, seeking out more conducive settings, or they deliberately create one for themselves. They seek out rooms where growth is the norm, not the exception. They find peers and collaborators who push them upward, challenging their assumptions and elevating their thinking, rather than merely maintaining the status quo or dragging them downward. Your environment, when chosen strategically, becomes immense leverage for your learning. Finally, mastering how to learn ultimately leads to the most critical skill for the 21st century: adaptability. When the world inevitably changes, those who rely solely on old, static knowledge quickly become outdated, irrelevant, and left behind. Those who have mastered the art of learning, however, are perpetually upgraded. They move seamlessly into new roles, pivot into emerging industries, and seize new opportunities precisely because they possess an unshakable confidence in their ability to acquire whatever new knowledge or skill is needed. In a world of relentless, rapid change, adaptability, born of learning, is infinitely more valuable than expertise that is frozen in time. To close this chapter, remember this profound truth: intelligence is not static, it is elastic. You can stretch it, you can train it, you can refine it, you can accelerate it. And once you truly learn how to learn, the world around you becomes far less intimidating, far less threatening. Why? Because you are no longer limited to what you know today. Through scanning fort full confidence in your ability to grow into whoever you need to become tomorrow, to master whatever challenges arise. That, my friend, is the very essence of becoming dangerously smart. Conclusion: the strategist's path to unrivaled success. As we draw this journey to a close, let us reflect on what it truly means to become dangerously smart. It is not about appearing intellectually superior, nor is it about winning every argument or collecting a shelf full of academic trophies. True dangerous intelligence is far more potent, far more practical. It is about moving through the world with unshakable clarity, sophisticated strategy, profound foresight, and unwavering emotional stability. It is about developing the rare capacity to understand how things truly work beneath the surface, how people genuinely think, how intricate systems operate, how seemingly small decisions compound into massive outcomes, how patterns relentlessly repeat themselves, and how intelligently applied leverage can multiply your impact beyond individual effort. A dangerously smart person is not necessarily the loudest voice in the room, demanding attention. Often, quite the contrary. They are frequently the quiet observer, the one who listens intently, watches diligently, acts with precise intentionality, and meticulously positions themselves in situations where the odds are overwhelmingly stacked in their favor. They are not defined by flashy displays of brilliance, but by consistent, effective results. Throughout this audiobook, become dangerously smart, or train your mind to win. You have explored many vital dimensions of strategic intelligence. We began with the foundational power of clarity, the antidote to confusion and the compass for your ambition. We delved into the immense value of information, not as mere data, but as convertible insight and leverage. We championed the profound usefulness of long-term thinking, the quiet force that allows compounding to work its magic across your life. You learned the critical importance of pattern recognition, transforming randomness into predictability. We highlighted the undeniable advantage of anticipation, outsmarting problems before they even arise. We explored the indispensable discipline of emotional control, the shield that protects your judgment from destructive impulses. You discovered the immense leverage of tactical communication, influencing outcomes and building alliances with precision. We uncovered how to use time as a strategic weapon, investing it wisely rather than merely spending it. We then delved into the elegant structure of systems thinking, understanding the mechanics of reality rather than reacting to mere events. And finally, we explored the ultimate meta skill, learning how to learn, ensuring your perpetual adaptability and growth. None of these concepts, let me emphasize, are mystical, innate talents reserved for a gifted few. They are all profoundly learnable. They are trainable. They are repeatable. And when diligently combined, when integrated into your daily habits and mental models, they create something truly formidable, an intelligent, strategic mind capable of navigating any challenge and seizing any opportunity. Dangerously smart people do not depend solely on raw talent, which can be fleeting or inconsistent. They actively build frameworks. They meticulously cultivate habits. They intelligently design systems. They relentlessly build leverage. They do not try to win through brute force or overwhelming effort. They strive to win through deep, nuanced understanding. They do not rely on the often fickle force of motivation. They rely on robust, intelligently designed structure. They do not passively wait for luck to strike. They actively create opportunities through meticulous preparation and strategic positioning. And perhaps most importantly, they take complete, unapologetic responsibility for their own minds. They treat thinking as a high-value skill, a muscle to be developed, rather than a passive background process they merely inherit. If there is one overarching insight, one profound truth worth remembering as you close this audiobook, it is this: intelligence is not a fixed, immutable trait you are born with. It is, in its most powerful form, designed. You are the architect of your own intelligence. You design it through what you choose to consume, what you dare to question, what you diligently practice, and what you strategically avoid. You design it through the quality of the conversations you engage in, the environments you consciously choose to inhabit, the standards you courageously uphold, and the significance of the problems you volunteer to solve. Every single choice, even the seemingly small ones, shapes the evolving architecture of your thinking. The world around you, in its default mode, relentlessly rewards shallow attention, quick, impulsive reactions, emotional impulsiveness, and immediate, short-term gratification. But the world also, quietly and consistently, rewards those who possess the rare fortitude to resist those temptations. It rewards those who are willing to observe deeply instead of rushing blindly, to think critically instead of merely assuming, to build with intention instead of mindlessly consuming, and to learn continuously instead of merely performing for approval. Dangerous intelligence lies precisely in that resistance, in choosing depth in a shallow world, precision in a messy world, and sophisticated strategy in a relentlessly reactive world. As you move forward from this moment, do not feel pressured to apply everything at once, to transform overnight. Intelligence compounds slowly, like a mighty river carving a canyon over millennia. Your thinking will evolve with consistent exposure and deliberate practice. Your systems will develop and mature through diligent iteration. Start with heightened awareness, then deliberately build one habit, one framework, one small change at a time. Then refine it, then repeat. Profound improvement does not need to be dramatic or instantaneous to be utterly transformative. A mere 1% increase in clarity today, a 1% improvement in your observation skills tomorrow, a 1% upgrade in your decision-making process next week. These seemingly small, consistent increments, applied over time, will quietly, inexorably rewrite your entire life's trajectory. The future, unequivocally, belongs to those who can think, truly think, not just recall information, but interpret it, not just react to currents of life, but intelligently anticipate them, not just survive change, but master the art of adapting to it, thriving within it, and shaping it. Becoming dangerously smart is not about dominating others or proving your superiority. It is fundamentally about mastering yourself and navigating life with a level of intelligence that consistently produces extraordinary, enduring results. If you choose to continue this exhilarating journey, the tools are now here, the frameworks are laid out for you, and a profound responsibility for your own intellectual destiny is yours. And that, my friend, is exactly where it should be.